Good evening and welcome to the San Bruno City Council regular meeting of March 28th, 2023. The meeting has been called to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Alvarez,
Here.
Councilmember Marty Medina,
Here.
Councilmember Salazar,
Here.
Vice Mayor Hamilton,
Here.
Mayor Rico Medina.
Here. Thank you. If you'd please rise and say the Pledge of Allegiance with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to item 4, public comments for items that are not on the agenda at this time. First, we'll take any members of the public that are here in the audience, and then we'll open it up to Zoom, and I'll ask the city clerk to please call the first speaker.
Okay. I have one in-person speaker card, Mike Peckham.
Good evening. Ready?
Yes, Mr. Peckham.
My name is Mike Peckham. I'm here tonight speaking on behalf of my mother, Kathy Peckham, who had a city eucalyptus tree out of Grundy Park fall on her house. After reaching out to the city manager and receiving a phone call back, Javon told me that, and I quote, historically, San Bruno employees do not go on private residences to remove trees or anything of that matter due to liability. Historically is the word he used. That is an absolute lie. I have attached in the packets provided an email sent by 20-year veteran San Bruno city worker Larry Serini, who was the arborist for our city. He states in this email that it was, in fact, San Bruno city employees' responsibility to take trees down, especially when they were a city tree, and also gives examples of times where he took private trees down for residences off of their homes. There was no course of action for my mom to take other than a just go with your insurance. It was very clear that the city manager just wanted to wipe his hands clean of this. Not once was I asked, how is your mother? Is she okay? How is her mental state? In my opinion, it is a direct reflection of the city council as a whole, as the city manager is appointed by you guys to deal with these situations. Where's the protocol? How is she supposed to know what to do? A yellow tag is slapped on her garage, but no phone call is given to let her know that she cannot stay at her house, but only go in to retrieve items. And we only knew this because we went back to pick up some things and saw the tag. This is how the city wants to handle situations like this, with a very obvious washing of the hands and a passing of the buck. I can only imagine what would happen on a larger scale crises, or what wouldn't happen. How is a 73-year-old, recently widowed woman who lives on Social Security supposed to come in and front all this money for an arborist and a place to stay and things of this nature? How is she expected to do that with zero direction from her city, the people that are put in place to represent us, especially in a time of crisis? This is what our taxes pay for. This is the respect that we are given back. This is the representation that we're given. In your packets, I've included photos of the destruction, photos of the yellow tag that was slapped on the garage, the email from Larry Serini, and the receipt from the arborist that my mom and her neighbor chose. Our city motto is this is the city with a heart. You guys tell me where that heart is, because it was very clear there was zero compassion, zero heart, zero anything of that matter given to my mom. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Peckham, for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker, I have a Virginia Yankee. She is remote, so I will allow her to come into the room. Virginia Yankee, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. I'm calling about the cable TV service. I was engaged in watching a 3-hour finale on Monday night, just when it started, a 3-hour finale on a show I've been watching for 6 weeks or so, and cable went out. I don't know how this happens, why it happens, but it seems to happen often. The last time the cable went out at our home was Super Bowl Sunday. So it seems to me that they need to rev up their customer service, get things working, or find somebody else to do the job. I'm very disappointed in CableNet city services, and I have a feeling I'm probably not alone. Thanks for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Lexis Livingood. Lexis Livingood, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. Mayor Medina, council members, City Manager Grogan, Community Service Director Matola, and Parks Manager Venecia. On behalf of the Pacific Heights community, I wanted to acknowledge the people who worked tirelessly in getting the medians on College Drive done. Park Manager Venecia, thank you for keeping your word with the former Community Service Director Audrey Jones Taylor in getting the water turned on. And thank you for following the project through to completion. Mayor Medina and Councilmember Marty Medina, thank you for meeting with the residents and walking the medians with them. City Manager Grogan, thank you very much for working with all involved in improving the project. Community Services Director Matola, thank you very much for working diligently with the community, Skyline College, the developer and design group to get the medians done. I know it wasn't easy, and I know I wasn't easy, but it's much appreciated. Thank you again to all who worked together to leave something beautiful behind for generations to come. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Tim. Tim, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Good evening, everyone. Just want to make a comment regarding the downtown as far as Nancy Foreman, who has a vision for downtown. She's been, for the last couple years, I think it's been about a couple years now, taking over the planters, making them look good, getting everybody involved in the community, making it a fun project for everyone in the community that likes gardening. It just really lights up the downtown and makes everybody happy. You know, the business owners, it brightens up their front of their store. It just brings a lot of joy. Just want to give, let Nancy know that thank you so much for doing what she does, putting the effort in, organizing this thing, getting people together, and we made new friends. So it's a really good thing. And I'd like to see more people involved in making our downtown what it should be like and having a vision for the downtown. It's a great thing. And my wife, Raina, would like to speak for the remaining time. Thank you.
I would like my 3 minutes,
Oh.
whatever that is.
Okay, well, maybe you can, is it possible we can reset the time?
I think you've been given the directive, and we will make sure it is 3 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hi, good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I echo what Tim just have said, and I think I also heard not heard, but when is the downtown gonna be basically uplifted and have a facelift? We need not only the planter, but more focus on having more, to look more appealing, more friendly for people to come and shop and hang out in our downtown. It seemed like spring is coming and upon us, and so it's summer. So can the city allocate the resources that they said that we're going to allocate to make sure that the downtown has it's friendly, has you know ways to like a recreation area like the Centennial Park. So I would like to see that basically move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your comments, for both of your comments. Next speaker, please.
There are no other hands raised.
Okay, thank you very much to everybody for speaking, and Mr. Peckham, for you coming down personally and presenting us with the information. On that, let's move on to item number 5, announcements and presentations. First, just as an acknowledgement, by order, the flags at City Hall and the other jurisdictions have been lowered to half-mast in regards to the victims of the tragedy in Nashville, Tennessee, that all too often we turn on the television and are horrored with what we see and what we hear and witness. And so the flags will be at half-mast through sunset to March 31st. Now we have some announcements. Item A, the annual spring egg hunt and pancake breakfast is scheduled for April 1st, 2023, beginning at 9 a.m. And for more information on this event and others, you can go to the recreation programming or onto our website. Next item, item B, there is a National Vietnam War Veterans Day is scheduled for March 29th, which is tomorrow at 12 noon at the Golden Gate National Cemetery Chapel, which is being put on by the Avenue of Flags. With that, we'll move on to item C, presentation of an update on the Tanforan for the San Bruno community engagement process and community priorities progress report. And I'm going to be turning this over to the Vice Mayor, who will turn it over to the City Manager, since due to my location and proximity to the project, I will be recusing myself and stepping off the dais, but there is no action, so I do not have to leave the room, but will be not participating. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can we receive the staff report, please?
Sure. Thank you, Vice Mayor Hamilton, members of the City Council, and members of the public, both here and watching at home. Javon Grogan, City Manager, and it is my pleasure to introduce this item to you. You will tonight receive a presentation on our Reimagining Tanforan public engagement process. As a reminder, the City Council adopted a Reimagining Tanforan land use fact sheet in July of 21. This set the parameters for the revitalization and transformation of Tanforan. Subsequently, just over a year later, Alexandria Real Estate Equities purchased the property in February of 2022. Alexandria then subsequently submitted their preliminary project application to the city in October of 22. The city then began an in-depth process to outreach to the community and engage them in what the future of Tanforan may look like. And so we're extremely happy today to present just this first phase to the City Council. And so the city hired Singer and Associates to support us in this effort, and Noah Starr, a account director from Singer and Associates, is here tonight. I will now turn the presentation over to Darcy Smith, the city's Assistant City Manager, but most importantly for this, she is the city's executive overseeing the Tanforan project. And so Darcy, without further ado.
Hi, yes, good evening, Honorable Vice Mayor, council members. Thank you for letting me speak before you tonight. Darcy Smith, Assistant City Manager. We are also joined tonight by Adam Alberti, Managing Partner at Singer Associates, who's assisted with this effort and here to answer any questions. So we have an agenda for this presentation that will start with a quick background and update that I'll cover, going over the objective of this item tonight, the background and opportunity of this site, which is one of the city's biggest opportunity sites for future development and revitalization. I'll quickly summarize the preliminary project application. We're not discussing that in detail tonight, but I'd be remiss if I didn't explain it to you as you're learning about some feedback on it. And then I'll cover the city-led community engagement process, which we partnered with Singer Associates. And then Noah Starr will come up and give a great presentation, really the highlight, around the Community Priorities Progress Report, which is the progress report on the first phase of engagement, which has been ongoing since October. And we'll end with conclusion and next steps, and then have time for public comment and questions and answers. So tonight, this presentation is to provide an update to you on the Tanforan for San Bruno community engagement process and the Community Priorities Progress Report, which was distributed with the staff report and available online. So with that, we'll jump in. But as City Manager Grogan said, there's some history here that's important because we're about 2 years in, which in land use planning is, it's a long-term process. It takes many, many years. But when you're 2 years in, you kind of need to celebrate that we've gotten this far. And we're tracking in alignment with where the city started. Again, 2 years ago, when we first heard rumors of 3 separate parcels selling, the city stepped in and prepared the land use fact sheet that was adopted by the City Council in July of 21. And that's really important because we started leading this process, as you'll hear tonight, as we led with the community engagement process, and that's a little unique for a private-owned parcel. We do that often with our general plan, with our transit corridors plan, we did it with the housing element, but when it's privately owned property, we don't always do it. But this is a big property, 44 acres, and that fact sheet lays out the vision for a new master plan that's the catalyst for revitalizing that northern part of the city. The transit corridors plan, which goes back about 10 years, was the southern and middle part of the city, downtown El Camino Real corridor. But the city didn't know at what point Tanforan would be poised to redevelop. And the vision lays out a center for life sciences and technology innovation, as well as retaining retail, creating new publicly accessible, privately owned open space amenities, and housing. And housing's really important. I'll talk a little bit about that role here, and that's also tracking alignment with the city's interest. So the city's perspective on this, again, important to explain how we got here. Our perspective is that housing is important. As you know, the City Council adopted the housing element in January, and we had to meet our regional housing needs, which were lofty for the city. But this site makes a huge dent in it with 1,000 units. This site is recognized as a key housing site by the Association of Bay Area Governments. So that's why the housing element looks at it for 1,000 housing units. There's also fiscal benefits. So there have been long declining retail tax from Tanforan that has created shortfalls in the city's revenue and operating budget. So with forecasts to have additional challenges to the city's tax base and with current economic forecasts and increasing pressure for the city to optimize where we can infrastructure investments, they create a mandate to ensure that this reuse is successful. And that's done through the variety of uses on the site. It's also a prime transit-oriented development opportunity. It has great access to BART, a little bit less optimal, but easy walk access to Caltrain. It's also on a Samtrans bus site. So it has 3 modes of transit, which is optimal, and it also has easy freeway access for those who choose to drive without clogging up the city's neighborhood streets. So the preliminary project application, again, I don't want to talk too much about it, but since it was submitted in October, available on our website, I wanted to just point out, again, that's tracking with the city's vision. These properties were bought by Alexandria Real Estate Equities, and their vision is laid out here. And important to note that the existing uses on the site will be scheduled to close down at some point in the future, hasn't been determined yet, with the exception of Target and the Century Movie Theater. And this application that was submitted, again, lays out that vision. And for folks who want to learn more about it, it is available on the website, but we won't be talking about it tonight. But important to note, again, it tracks with 1,000 housing units. the Life Science Campus, which you see on the south here in blue, and new retail space, and then an upgraded Target and Century theaters. And I'll just show these images quickly, because as we went out to the community, they were shown to the community to help tell the story of what the vision is. They were prepared by the developer and their architect, Gensler. And what this shows is that there's a new opportunity to create new spaces. And what really resonated with the community as we went out to them with engagement was these publicly accessible, privately owned spaces that connect the development to BART and to the surrounding neighborhoods and really create new opportunities in San Bruno that don't exist today for outdoor dining in a larger scale, outdoor shopping, entertainment all together. And this is a successful model for revitalization that has been used elsewhere. So with that, what else is the city doing? 'Cause you'll hear later from Noah Starr about the engagement, but I wanted to just point out that the city at this point in time is launching on to the formal review of the preliminary plan application, and we're preparing feedback to make sure that it's in alignment with the city's vision and requirements. As I mentioned, the fact sheet, the city's general plan. We're initiating technical analysis studies, economic assessments consistent with the California Environmental Quality Act. We brought on a professional planning firm, Good City Company, and a CEQA consultant, ICF, that's worked in the city before to help the city with that. We're also working with key stakeholders and agencies, other interested parties. Those include BART, who certainly want to improve their interface with the station, SFO, and FAA. And there will be, as with the housing element, as you learned, a review for land use compatibility plan consistency for this site. So next, I'll talk a little bit, just a little bit, because I don't want to steal the show, about the Tanforan for San Bruno effort and how the city led that with our consultants. So we launched this in October, and I came to you then to present a preview. And I said a lot of exciting things are coming. So we launched the website, which again is tanforan4sanbruno.com. And we also launched the storefront, which you'll see some dazzling pictures of later, and then this report, which you'll get the summary of. And what we were trying to do was a really broad community understanding through this effort, but we also wanted to listen. So we really wanted to develop that understanding and then focus on listening to the community's needs and vision to gain input really early on in the process. Sometimes this is done mid-process, sometimes it's done late. We want to get in there very early and get input on broader community priorities, not just to guide development, but to guide policies in the city. And we really seeked, as you'll hear about from Noah Starr, to learn what the community loved about Tanforan and how this new Tanforan can benefit the broader community. Again, this is a really unique opportunity, and we want to ensure how it transforms, supports the community today and in the future. And this is, again, a unique process for a project of this size. And so it is special, and you'll see some really special things. So again, we launch the website. We'll continue to maintain it. If folks want to follow on tonight and see the report, it's on there. And we launched the Engagement Center. You'll see some better pictures of this. I know many of you went to the site, but for the public following along tonight who this might be new to, this is inside the shops at Tanforan, and it's purpose-built space to host meetings, open houses, office hours, events, and it will remain active throughout the project. We'll continue to use it for various events, but we started and opened this to the community in November and had a series of events through last month. And it was both informational and participatory, and it was great because we were able to get out and talk to people and learn a lot. So we've launched a lot of different communication methods, again, for the public who wants to follow us along. We did direct mailers, social and digital advertising, and a number of articles in the city manager's e-newsletter. So with that, I'll turn it over to Noah Starr, who will make the presentation about the report, which I guarantee you will be 100 times more exciting than what I just said.
Thank you, Darcy. Good evening, Honorable Vice Mayor and members of the City Council. I want to start with a thank you from Singer Associates for the opportunity to lead this engagement effort on behalf of the City of San Bruno. For background, my name is Noah Starr. I'm an account director at Singer Associates. We are a boutique public affairs firm with an extensive array of experience leading community engagement programming across this region. We also have deep knowledge of relevant issues to this community from past work with the City of San Bruno. We are honored to help the City with a Heart develop a shared vision for the Tanforan of tomorrow And we really want to start by applauding the city for the extensive measures it has taken to solicit this public conversation very early on in this process. This ensures that resident and community input takes place in tandem with the processing of the application, and we think that's really important. And we're very glad to be a part of this process. So this community engagement process we designed in tandem with the city of San Bruno was crafted to spark a conversation about Tanforan's past and also about what the public hopes to achieve in its future uses. It's important to note that this outreach was twofold. First, we were really focused on identifying community priorities for San Bruno as a whole and how this particular site can best address those needs. And second, we wanted to understand what residents have loved about Tanforan in the past, and so that those features may be incorporated in the future plans. It's important to note, as Darcy mentioned earlier, that this process so far has not been designed to solicit feedback from the public about what they feel about the preliminary project application. That will take place in later phases. A focal point of Tanforan for San Bruno was the Tanforan Public Engagement Center that you see on the slides here. This space was built out by my firm, Singer Associates, in partnership with the city, and was fully funded by the developer. And we really conceived this space as a physical location and a forum to host the conversations and dialogue with the public that were necessary to identify the community priorities that are laid out in the report that we're going to discuss tonight. We were really pleased by the robust responses we received from the community. And I also want to make a point here that while the responses we received should not be viewed as a statistically significant representation of the San Bruno community, they are representative and valuable in terms of identifying priorities from self-selected residents who are keenly interested in the future of Tanforan. So I want to say thank you to all those members of the public that submitted feedback through our surveys, visited the storefront, and including members of the city council that visited. So I'm going to begin the presentation by, again, noting that the purpose of our outreach was twofold. One, of course, we were focused on identifying community priorities, but also we understand that an important aspect of the outreach was the outreach itself. We wanted to make sure that the public was aware of the opportunities to weigh in and provide feedback. So with that goal in mind, our team conducted an extensive, equitable, and inclusive outreach that encouraged participation from a broad cross-section of the San Bruno community and engaging with the Tanforan for San Bruno community engagement process. That effort included the production, dissemination of promotional materials and informational items that were produced in multiple languages. We also expended a great deal of effort to ensure that the in-person engagement experience at the Community Engagement Center was identical to the digital engagement experience offered on the Tanforan for San Bruno website. Our survey was also translatable to over 100 languages via Google Translate. And finally, our outreach was amplified and through leveraging a variety of social media platforms, digital advertising, existing city channels such as the city manager's monthly newsletter. And I also want to tip my hat to the members of the city council that helped share our outreach materials with your constituents. It certainly made a big difference. So on this slide, you'll see some metrics that our outreach yielded. As Darcy mentioned, this process really began in earnest last November when the storefront opened and concluded at the end of last month when our survey closed. During that period, we saw almost 20,000 unique visitors to the website, over 600 survey completions, 609 to be exact, and we logged a total of 137 registered visitors to our in-person events, not including individuals that didn't register or were in the mall and stopped by because they saw an event going on. That's particularly important because that means that about a quarter of all of our survey responses came from the in-person experience in the mall, and I think it reflects the value that space offered. And additionally, we hosted 13 public events with an additional standalone event hosted for city staff. Of those 13 events, 4 were large open house style events where the vast majority of our engagement took place, We also had 9 other office hour style events that provided for a more intimate conversation with visitors and allowed our staff to answer questions more directly. So before we take a look at the sentiment expressed by our survey respondents, we want to take a moment to also understand who participated in Tanforan for San Bruno, who were our survey respondents. And as you can see from the 4 charts on this slide, we really had a broad cross-section of the San Bruno community, representing a diverse array of different ages, genders, living arrangements, and ties to the community. Okay, so now we're going to look at the sentiment expressed by our survey respondents. And please keep in mind that these responses reflect desires about San Bruno's future and are not necessarily confined to the geographic boundaries of the Tanforan site. Our survey presented several opportunities for respondents to weigh in and provide both quantitative and qualitative data that speak to their preferences for the future of the community. On the left of the slide, you'll see a snapshot of one of the central quantitative questions our survey posed that asked respondents to assign a value preference to 10 different categories of potential future uses for the Tanforan site. The results show that overall, respondents found new retail and jobs and businesses to be most important future uses for the Tanforan site, followed by new public spaces and sustainability in third and fourth. However, for the City Council, I think it's important to note that for San Bruno residents, when you're just taking a look at the respondents that were residents of San Bruno, it was unique in that the top 4 categories, new public spaces, new retail, jobs and businesses, and city infrastructure, almost were in a dead even tie. And so I think there was some homogeneity in what the San Bruno residents want and desire for the future of the site. So overall, we noticed that survey respondents has really demonstrated a resounding message that they desire new places to go and new experiences in San Bruno. These are experiences and gathering places that may be lacking in this city, but that are available in other municipalities across the region, and they see Tanforan as an opportunity to resolve that. Oh, I'm sorry. I missed something here. On the right side of this slide, you also see a snapshot of one of the qualitative questions we asked in the survey. These qualitative questions are important because they provide context to the quantitative questions and drive home the point that I just made about new public places. So continuing on with more qualitative data, one of our exercises in the Tanforan for San Bruno community engagement process asked respondents to share their favorite memories from the mall and also thoughts about what makes San Bruno great. And there's some snapshot of these responses on the screen here. The word cloud exercises provide context of the quantitative data that we just looked at and we'll continue to discuss shortly. And you'll notice that there are both handwritten and printed responses to this survey pictured. I just want to take a moment to note that the reason for that is that we painstakingly ensured that the responses that we were receiving digitally were also showcased in person in the space so that visitors to the center were able to experience the grand total of the conversation occurring online. Okay, moving on to some more of the quantitative results. On this slide, you'll find results from what we call the priorities activity. In this exercise, respondents were asked to make a choice, a forced choice, in ranking the 4 categories you see on the left in terms of their importance to San Bruno's future. These 4 categories, housing, economics, public space, and culture, are intentionally broad and designed to capture a wide array of different attributes. Each category was ranked 1 through 4 according to its priority level to the survey respondent. Categories ranked 1 represented high priorities, while categories ranked 4 represented low priorities. Respondent scores were then weighted by rank and divided by the total number of surveys to establish a mean rank score for each category. And sorry to get into the weeds here, but we just want to make sure that we drive home the point that lower mean rank scores are correlated with higher preferences. So taking a look at the results on the right side of the screen, the results show a clear preference again for economics. The second highest ranked score was public spaces. So again, residents expressing a desire for more places to go and new experiences in San Bruno. In third place, we had housing. And fourth, cultural experiences like theater, music, and art. Now we're going to move on to the insights from our findings. These are showcased in the report that is available on our website. These are high-level takeaways that speak to the community's citywide preferences and priorities, and they're informed by the results of our outreach and both the quantitative and qualitative data. And these insights should really be considered by the city as it reviews the preliminary project application moving forward. So first, economics, and you've heard me say this several times tonight, but there was really a resounding message from the community that this community places a strong emphasis on economics, on job creation, and generally on San Bruno's future prosperity. Members of the broader San Bruno community that engaged with Tanforan for San Bruno were incredibly vocal and adamant about the city's economic future. Respondents also expressed an excitement for new retail opportunities. And although the engagement process at this phase did not allow for the articulation of specific types of retail desired, our outreach does show a clear community preference for new experiences not readily available in San Bruno, which I think is a good transition to the next slide on community gathering. And again, our results show that there was a very strong public enthusiasm and excitement for new places to gather and new retail options outside. Housing, despite the deep need for housing across the region and in the city, we received little feedback that the proposed housing was too much or too little. Instead, it appeared that participants felt the proposal laid out in the preliminary project application was appropriate in size. Additional feedback on housing was generally muted and relatively well received. And finally, sustainability. While it never reached a top concern for survey respondents, it certainly was a constant presence in the feedback we received. The general concept conveyed was that developments of the future should not look like developments of the past. And respondents articulated a strong desire for mindful and conscientious planning and new developments with climate resilience measures added and included. So to summarize our findings, our outreach revealed that the community preferences articulated during the Tanforan for San Bruno community engagement process were generally in alignment with the basic tenets of the land use fact sheet that this council approved in July of 2021. That document served as the inspiration for the preliminary project application. And furthermore, the public really appreciated the opportunity to not only participate in these early stages of Tanforan for San Bruno, but they look forward to the next opportunities to provide feedback as the review process commences. And finally, the city's choice to expand the review process to allow for Tanforan for San Bruno was met by public appreciation. Providing the public with this early and unique opportunity to weigh in was a valuable decision, and that will help facilitate the city's goals in ensuring that this project meets the needs of the community. The storefront and the website will continue to play an important role in the future outreach efforts related to this project. And on that note, related to next steps, this is a good time to turn it back to Darcy Smith, who will talk about next steps in the project.
Thank you, Noah. That was great. So the timeline. Well, as I said, we're 2 years in. We probably have a little bit under 2 years to finish this master planning process and the concurrent listening process for community priorities. This started in October, and we anticipate, again, it'll be wrapped up fall of next year at the latest. But we're now going to move into a new phase. As I mentioned, the city will finish up our review of the preliminary project application and initiate the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA, technical studies analysis, and other economic assessment studies. And we anticipate the submittal of a formal application this year. And the storefront, as you saw, it's great space, will continue to be utilized by the city and our team to go out and engage with the community at the appropriate points in the engagement process. Some of it will be more formal moving forward. So this report that you saw the snapshot of tonight, but is quite dazzling, especially when viewed online in the flip book format, is available online, and we would love to get community feedback or questions about it. And the Public Engagement Center remains open for tours that either Singer Associates or city staff will host by appointment. And like I said, we have a lot of work ahead of us, and we also need to also really work collaboratively with other stakeholders, as you heard me mention previously. So in closing, we invite the public to follow along on social media or outreach to us at our city email, and we'll continue to push out social and digital updates and articles in the city manager's e-newsletter. I believe one might be coming out this month. So that's a great way to stay updated on this. And last, in closing, we'll turn it back to the Vice Mayor and City Council to open this up for public comments and then have City Council feedback, any questions on the presentation. As a reminder, no action taken tonight. Thank you very much for that, allowing us to make the presentation.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the presentation. I have lots of comments. I'm very excited, but I will hold my tongue and follow the agenda, and we will open this up for public comments. Or are there speaker cards for folks in the room or folks online who would wish to make a public comment on this item?
I do not have any in-person speaker cards, but we do have 2 hands raised remotely. The first speaker is Nicholas H. Nicholas, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hi, thank you. I'm a resident of District 4. I just want to say thank you for adding more housing. Like I was said in the presentation, we are facing a shortage. But as far as the engagement demographics, I just would like to see, hopefully in the future, include ethnicity, as our Latin community in District 4 is very large. So I just want to make sure our voices are heard. And then also in the survey that was taken for the housing, I seen that the importance for housing was 3rd. And I think that would be different if more survey takers, we tried to get more survey takers to be renters. There was a high percentage of survey takers who are homeowners. And furthermore, on the housing, I would like the city council to possibly think about raising the minimum percentage of affordable housing from 15% to at least 25%. Families are starting to have to move further and further away from their jobs and other family members. So San Bruno is a great place with all the public transportation for low-income families to move to avoid those transportations. And also, I would hope to see less parking in the structure. We have faced a lot of storms lately, and hopefully having less cars in the area would mitigate some of that greenhouse gas impacts. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments and your feedback. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Paul Wapensky. Paul, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Good evening. This plan and the transit corridor plan both have BART as a key component. For those who have been paying attention, BART's in deep financial trouble and recovering from the COVID years and a growing trend of work from home. And there's talks of schedule cuts and even station closures. Has the city been informed if our station is possibly on that list? And what are the planners doing for this project as contingencies if BART does close the station or if they cut schedule? Because that's going to affect parking, traffic, and numerous other things that could happen to these plans. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your questions and feedback. Our next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Tim. Tim, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hi, it's actually Raina. I just wanted to ask if a grocery store such as Whole Food or Molly Stone moving into that complex, that area, that would be nice to have a Whole Food grocery store. Have that been pursued or basically thought of? That's one I wanted to know. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker, please.
There are no other remote hands raised.
Okay, thank you. Does staff want to respond to any of the questions that we heard from the public before we come back to council?
With regard to station closures from
Yeah, the
Art?
station closure and the potential grocery and the housing, affordable housing percentages. I know that the affordable housing percentages are somewhat fixed, but I just wanted to know if there's any feedback we can provide at this time, or is it something we would provide in the future?
Sure. At a high level, the city's affordable housing inclusionary zoning ordinance calls for 15%. The exact amount of affordable housing that will be in this development is not available at this time. The developer certainly is well aware of the city's affordable inclusionary zoning ordinance, and whether additional affordable housing units will be included will be determined later. With regard to BART, I'll turn that over to Darcy Smith.
I've had a few meetings with Bart recently to discuss the project and, again, the interface from an urban design perspective. We're working on that. But at this point in time, we have no information about that BART station closing. So I think we can assume it will remain open. There was also a question about a grocery store. And at this point, the project plans are still preliminary. But as you saw, there will be new modernized retail space. But the tenants have not been finalized. The tenants that are firmed up are Target and the Century at Tanforan movie theaters because they have long-term leases, and as you heard, the project will incorporate them in the renovations.
Thank you very much. Okay, we'll bring it back to City Council. I am so very excited about this project. It was a great move by the city of San Bruno to get out ahead of this. When we learned of the pending sale of those properties, and to put out to the world what San Bruno would be looking for a potential buyer of this site, and that's what we're seeing start to come together here with this plan. I want to commend staff and the whole team for the high level of public engagement, especially so early in the process, so that folks really have a chance to see what is being envisioned as it's starting to come together, and have their voices heard as those plans are made. This is really an extraordinary once-in-a-generation opportunity for San Bruno, and I'm pleased with how we are approaching it. So I just want to thank everyone for the great information, and look forward to the next steps. Are there any other comments? You have one ditto? Go ahead.
Yeah, I could echo that. This is probably the most comprehensive public outreach that has happened as long as I've been on the council, and it's definitely appreciated. I also wanted to inform the public that the mall's still open, to encourage you to still go there. There is an art movement that's happening at Tanforan I think there's at least 3 galleries and a new gallery opening very, very soon, maybe the next.
I believe it opens on Sunday.
Exactly.
Opening on Sunday.
Right. So if you would like to, I don't know how much longer it's going to rain, but malls are a great place to go when it's raining to get your steps in. And if not that, there's also Planet Fitness right next door. So just wanted to thank everyone, staff, everyone involved with getting us to this point. It's amazing when you stop and think. It seemed like it was not too long ago, and that's that whole COVID memory loss that I think most people experience. At least I know I'm experiencing it. Like, we're going on 2 years, and looking forward to the next step. So thank you to all.
Thank you, Council Member. Okay, this is not an action item, so we will not be taking any action. So I will turn the meeting back over to our mayor. Thank you.
recommended by earlier council action and may be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion unless request A through F for a separate vote under consent. Seeing none, are there any items that a question or comment is asked for? Councilman Medina.
Item E as in elephant.
Okay. E, anything else? I have this adoption of resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Millbrae Community Television, MCTV, for television production and programming services in an amount not to exceed $100,000 to provide services through June 30th, 2024, and allocating $100,000 from the cable.
And the need, and I appreciate the work that Millbrae Community Television has been providing to enable these council meetings to continue. They're very well done. I think we went through a little learning curve. The funding source. It would seem to me that to have our, which would be more out of the general fund than for the cable enterprise or city net services to provide, to be the funding source. So just questioning, should it be there from employee? It just seems like that role and the need are not exactly aligned. So I'm seeing if it was, shouldn't the revenue or the funding source be more from the general fund?
City manager.
Sure, thank you. That the city does receive PEG, which is generally referred to as Public Educational Government Access Fees, to run our public television station, and those revenues do go into the expenses and the services they provide. But historically, the city has allocated both the PEG revenues and but know that there are specific, the provision of government access television and making your meeting.
This item. Okay, we'll go to item F. Act, which requires an oral report, which I'm giving, of a summary. This item can be adopted on consent, but before approving the consent calendar on the consent, which adopts a resolution approving of an item for the city manager contract to provide for a monthly salary of $25,000 plus a 420 benefits commencing on April 10th, 2023, and extending through August 9th, 2023, unless terminated sooner.
No hands are raised.
All right, we'll bring it back to council. Again, there's items 6A through F. Is there any action? Vice Mayor.
I'll make a motion to approve the items on consent.
Motion made. Is there a second?
Second?
Motion Hamilton, second Alvarez. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? I'm hearing 5-0, passed unanimously on consent.
And waive further reading of an ordinance of the City of San Bruno amending Article 3, zoning of Title 12, land use of the San Bruno Municipal Code by amending Section 12.300.070 to limit commercial cannabis retail sales, storefront sales to the Transit Corridors Plan Area, MXR, TOD1, TOD2, and PD zones, reduce the number of commercial cannabis retail sales permits from 3 to 1, allow a maximum of 2 cannabis distribution facility permits in the M1 zone north of San Bruno Avenue and east of El Camino Real, and deleting Section 4.70.070 and making a finding of exemption under the California Environmental Quality Act.
Thank you. Mr. Grogan.
Thank you, Mayor Medina, members of the council, and members of the public. Tonight's item, as read by the city clerk, is to undertake various amendments to the city's commercial cannabis regulations. As a reminder, on October 11th, the city council adopted 2 ordinances that collectively are referred to as our commercial cannabis regulations. The first ordinance added a new chapter to the city's zoning code to allow storefront retail cannabis sales as well as distribution facilities. That second ordinance amended the city's municipal code to regulate cannabis operations, as well as added a new chapter defined as commercial cannabis operators permit. The city ordinances were effective on November 10th. In December, the city released a application package for cannabis operations. Subsequently, in January 10th and January 24th of 2023, the City Council requested various amendments to these approved cannabis regulations, and staff has appropriately processed those and are here tonight to present them to you for action through this public hearing. So tonight's presentation will be presented by Peter Gilley, the city's Community and Economic Development Director, and I will now turn the presentation over to Mr. Gilley.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mayor and members of the council. We are here to go through the commercial cannabis regulations. We'll touch on what the Planning Commission recommendation was for the ordinance changes, and then end with the recommended action, and staff will be available for any questions. As was noted, we are here at council's direction to amend these regulations and hold the hearing and to consider the ordinance that would make the changes that council has requested. I'm going to start with an overview of the commercial cannabis regulations at the high level. As was noted, a lot of work was done in 2022 to put these rules into place. Council requested certain changes happen in January, and in February there was a discussion and a study session actually, and in February the Planning Commission had a hearing where they made a recommendation on the proposed changes, which I'll get to the Planning Commission's recommendation later on. In general, the existing rules as they are right now would allow up to a maximum of 4 businesses that deal with commercial cannabis in the city. Up to 3 can be retail. These can be located in our transit corridor zones in downtown or at the shops at Tanforan. And up to 1 can be a distribution use, which is allowed to be proposed in the industrial area north of 380. Basically, any other type of commercial cannabis use is not allowed. Cultivation, manufacturing, any type of labs or testing, micro businesses or temporary events, or cafes for on-site consumption. Those are all prohibited by the ordinance. Only a retail location or a distribution location. Also in our regulations, following the state's recommendations, the rules have buffers from sensitive uses, and in the city's rules, no cannabis operation can be within 600 feet of a sensitive use, and the City Council defines sensitive uses in general as any type of use that is focused on children. So youth centers, daycare centers, schools, parks, and public libraries. The ordinance also has a process for which any applicant has to go through to be selected as one of the maximum of 4 businesses. There's extensive background checks. There will be a pre-screening by staff. Council will review all of the applicants that provided all the appropriate materials. And then after council reviews and selects which operators are going to get a permit, that business has to go through a conditional use permit process to go through the Planning Commission and then back to council to talk about whether that appropriate site is appropriate. So it is a very detailed process that gives the council 2 opportunities to weigh in at the operator's permit level and then also at the use permit. So this is a map that was shown at the last meeting we held on this. It's the same as the maps in your packet. It has just been rotated to be able to show more of it on a rectangular screen. So whereas you're probably used to seeing El Camino as more of a north-south, in this map, El Camino is actually going horizontal. Again, under the current regulations, up to 3 retail locations can be located in the blue or yellow. The blue parcels are our transit corridor zones, and the yellow are downtown and the shops at Tanforan, and we made that a different color because the proposed amendments would specifically take those out. The magenta is the industrial area where the distribution is allowed, and then the sensitive use are shown with the light blue and light green, light blue being the schools and library, and the light green being the parks. So if you are a retailer or distribution parcel, but you are in one of those buffers, then you're not allowed to even apply. Now, under the proposed changes to change the maximum number of retailers to the at most 1, and the distribution can be 1 or 2, but the total of is a maximum of 2 total. The retailers will be allowed in the blue. The yellow areas, downtown and shops at Tanforan, are removed, and the distribution is unchanged. So this shows you, basically in the blue is where the 1 retail location could be, and in the magenta are where the 1 to 2 distribution locations could be. And then we provide this table to show what has changed in the amended ordinance and what has not. In general, the total number of allowed operators is reduced from a maximum of 4 to a maximum of 2. The number of retail operators goes from a maximum of 3 to a maximum of 1. The allowed retail locations are reduced to just the transit corridor zone, so just the blue. The number of distribution operators actually increases. You could have a maximum of 1, but since the total of all cannabis is 2, if there are 2 distribution operators, then there cannot be a retail one. The locations for the distribution have not changed. The sensitive use buffers have not changed, and the application process is not changed. So going into the Planning Commission's recommendation, the Planning Commission actually recommended that the council not amend the existing ordinance, that they leave the ordinance in place as it is. From the Planning Commission's perspective, they believed that more locations is a positive. That is their opinion. They also believe that the way the process is oriented, if council wants to start with just 1, the existing ordinance actually allows you to do that. So the Planning Commission recommendation was not to adopt any changes to the ordinance at this time. But for tonight's recommended action, based on council's direction, the recommendation is to introduce the ordinance as read in title by the clerk, which would go from up to 4 to up to 2 actual businesses. It would remove downtown and the shops at Tanforan, and otherwise leave the hearing process and leave the buffers unchanged. So there are alternatives. The council can introduce the ordinance with minor changes, or could choose to follow the Planning Commission recommendation and not introduce the ordinance, in which case the existing cannabis regulations would remain in effect. If council does introduce this ordinance in some form, staff intends to reopen the application period at the beginning of May, which is basically when the new rules would go into effect. We would anticipate coming to council in the fall with a list of applicants that have met all the application materials. And with that, staff is available to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Are there any questions from colleagues on the presentation?
I have a question.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Gilly. I just have one question. If the council were to vote tonight to accept the Planning Commission's recommendation and not make any changes, would we still have to wait until May to start up the process again, or would we be able to start it up immediately? Considering that it was open when we stopped for this.
If the council does not amend these regulations and conveys that there is no plan to amend them, then we would likely be able to reopen in April. We have to do some logistics. I don't know exactly when.
Thank you.
Any other questions on the presentation at this time? Seeing none, it is a public hearing. So at this time, let's open up the public hearing and see if there are any speakers, please.
First person I'll be bringing in is Nicholas H. Nicholas, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hi, thank you again. I just wanted to express that I agree with the Planning Commission not to change the ordinance. There's a lot of cannabis companies that are mobile and deliver within San Bruno, so I don't see a reason why San Bruno shouldn't keep that money here and allow for more businesses. And I also think that in the past, the BIPOC community has been heavily burdened with the outdated laws on the cannabis. And so I would like to see at least 50% of the businesses in San Bruno to be a BIPOC, from a BIPOC community member. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Nancy Foreman. Nancy, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Hello, Mayor Medina and members of City Council. In October of 2022, you had an elected City Council that voted for the recommendation of the Planning Commission to allow retail cannabis in downtown San Bruno. In January 2023, there was one new council member. This council member put forth a motion to amend the ordinance to not allow any retail cannabis sales in our downtown. To me, revoting on an issue that was previously approved invalidates your previous council. Some of you have stated you don't want dispensaries downtown. You have a fear of children being exposed to marijuana, yet we have numerous liquor stores and smoke shops that children can enter. Currently, there's a woman living on San Mateo Avenue and nearby streets. She leaves food boxes and trash all around, defecates on the street. Her sleeping accommodations often impede the public sidewalk. When upright and walking around, she lashes out, often in the middle of the street. I've witnessed adults and children running. We have a man who lives on the avenue, poops in the park, sleeps in a closed business doorway, and uses the newspaper racks outside of Starbucks as his personal food pantry. Recently, I found sealed bottles of liquor in a planter. Children could have easily have found these first. I constantly find empty small liquor bottles in the planters. In front of the tax place near Atlas, I pulled out an empty half-pint bottle of booze. How is it okay to walk daily past this behavior and a dispensary is not welcome? At a dispensary, you have to show your ID. No one under 21 can enter, plus the dispensary provides their own very strict security. Please, follow guidance from your Planning Commission and respect your previous council vote. After all, the voters in San Bruno approved the tax, and the merchants I talked to were very excited about creating more foot traffic. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
I will now be bringing in Virginia Yankee. Virginia, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Can you hear, excuse me, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good. Let me turn up the volume. Hold on. Okay. Dear to the councilors, to the mayor, to the city manager, to everyone. I, as a longtime citizen of San Bruno since 1972, am against having more than one dispensary and one mail order dispensary in our small town. I do not think everyone in this town wants this type of business. Consider the fact that the more cannabis stores San Bruno opens, the less money each store will make. There will only be a limited number of customers for each store. I understand that cannabis is the thing right now, but we are a small town. We do not need that many nearby. My other concern is this. San Bruno is interested, I thought, in bettering the downtown area. Consider if you or a friend of yours was operating a store next door, be it a deli, a restaurant, a beauty shop, or even a bar. Would you like people hanging around waiting to get into the cannabis store? I think not. Particularly if you or we are interested in improving our downtown image. San Bruno needs to improve the area, and that will not happen if we open these dispensaries. Lastly, think of all the kids walking either to Bel Air School or even to Allen. They will probably be curious enough to go check out the store selling cannabis products. This is not where we want our children to hang out, even if they cannot get in. Tanforan will have families and kids. Do we want a store nearby them? Why not put one store on Sneath Lane, one store opposite National Cemetery that places away from schools and children? Commodore Playground is blocks away. In closing, since the people never voted to have a cannabis store in the first place, we voted on the tax, but never on the stores themselves. And we voted only on the tax rate. How did we ever end up with needing so many stores? San Bruno needs to improve our image, and that will not happen if we open these dispensaries. Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
Next speaker is Connor. Connor, whenever you're ready, you may begin.
Good evening, councilors. Connor Johnston. I own a couple social equity cannabis dispensaries in San Francisco and may potentially be part of an application team in San Bruno, full disclosure. I spoke at your January meeting when you considered these changes, and I got the sense then that the majority of the council is pretty well decided on the issue, but I will reiterate some of my points then, just in the hope that maybe my perception then was incorrect. You retain the right and the authority under the existing legislation to limit yourselves to one store at the outset throughout the duration of the program. So these changes aren't really necessary insofar as council already has the authority to control the number of stores that are approved and to limit it to one for an initial period or for good if that is the will of the council. So to some extent, notwithstanding the location changes, the change in the quantity of stores is not necessary under the current legislation. And so I would urge you to take the Planning Commission's recommendation on that. And also at your January meeting, I mentioned some of these figures, and I'll just reiterate them again. In terms of how many stores other jurisdictions have per person. So Berkeley has about one for every 29,000 people. The city of Tracy is about one for every 19,000. State of Washington is about one store for every 16,000 people. Sacramento is about one store for every 13,000 people. Pacifica is about one for every 9,000. San Francisco is getting to around one for every 8,000. It changes very frequently. Colorado, Montana, Oregon are all around one store for every 6,000 or 7,000 people. So with only one store, San Bruno would be one for every 43,000 or so people, which is pretty high. And what happens when you have only one store at a market of that size is that the community impacts are actually amplified. So the lines, the possible traffic impacts, and those kind of things are amplified. And consumers and patients are deprived of the opportunity for competition, better prices, and more choices. So in many ways, it's worse from a community impact standpoint to only have one store. I would encourage and ask you to consider keeping the legislation as is with respect to the number of stores and just exercising your discretion as a council to decide how many you want to approve at any given time. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Next speaker, please.
There are no other hands raised.
Thank you. This is the last opportunity for someone to speak under public public hearing, I'm sorry, because once we close the public hearing, there will not be a second opportunity. Last call?
No hands are raised.
All right, thank you. Like to bring it back to council for closing of the public hearing, please.
Make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Motion and a second to close public hearing. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? 5-0. And I'm going to let the city clerk figure out who the second was, because I heard a tie. I knew the first. I knew.
I heard Marty.
So, thank you. All right, let's bring it back to council for other discussion, deliberation, and/or action. Colleagues?
I'll go.
Vice Mayor.
So I don't think anything I'm going to say is going to be a surprise. I remain in favor of keeping the ordinance the way that it is. It was heartening to hear there was a unanimous vote from the Planning Commission in that regard, and that the Planning Commission used the same reasoning that I and many public commenters used when last discussing this, about why it doesn't make a lot of sense to change the legislation that we have. I'm going to just read a little bit from the resolution the Planning Commission sent back to us. The Planning Commission hereby finds that the proposed amendments to the municipal code to amend provisions for commercial cannabis retailers does not prevent facts to substantiate a change to the existing ordinance. The Planning Commission noted that the number of cannabis businesses and their locations can be limited to fewer allowed under the existing ordinance by the City Council through the Cannabis Operators Permit selection process. I won't read the whole thing, but and just to go to some of the public comments, I'm just going to skip down to the fifth point in the resolution, sixth point. The existing cannabis ordinance will not be detrimental to the health, safety, morals, comfort, and general welfare of the citizens of San Bruno. This was passed unanimously by the Planning Commission. So I remain in support of keeping the ordinance the way that it is, and reopening the process so that we can move forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other speakers? Sorry, just looking for lights. None? Councilmember Minnick.
Sure. On January 10th, 2023, I voted no to change the cannabis ordinance, and the council approved to agendize the change by a 3-2 vote. 2 weeks later, on January 24th, I told my colleagues it is best to have options, choices, and competition. However, it was very clear my preferences were in the minority. The majority were adamant in their intent to change the ordinance. In the past 2 months, I have thought about my votes and continue to believe there is no need to change the ordinance, because the council has always retained the ultimate authority to decide on limiting the number, the type, and the location of the stores. There are so many other things that we need to work on in San Bruno, and I look forward to getting to those after we finish with this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from colleagues on this topic? Councilmember Salazar?
I might as well say something. This was my idea, and I agree. I am not usually one to try to prolong things or to add, any additional work to staff. And this was my idea to bring it back, to change it. And I know that when I introduced it, it was at the end of a meeting, already long meeting, and I didn't really offer a lot of information other than what my intention was at the time. And I did get majority support to move forward. Listening to what the Planning Commission said, I did listen to their meeting, the first one, where they gave their comments. And in one thing I do agree with what they said was that perhaps we didn't present enough information to rationalize why a change was needed. And This has been very divisive from the very beginning. I went back and watched a lot of the meetings. We've been having these discussions, believe it or not, going back to 2011 when it was first decided to ban medical dispensaries. And that's been on the books since then. Still on the books right now. It says that, in fact, it says that commercial and medical uses are a nuisance. So things do change. Opinions change and things evolve. I know that this is a growing market, and council decided to go down this route, even though it was divisive to the community, hopefully to generate some revenue. And so here we are tonight with this. And we heard from one speaker today, somebody in the industry, and he threw some numbers out based on ratios in terms of what other cities are doing. And the one dispensary per 19,000 population is in line with some of the research I saw from some of the public health organizations that have done research into this, and they felt that that was a comfortable number. The proposal that I put forward of having 2 businesses in the city aligns with that number, and so I don't think that it's going to cause any major impact to what we're doing, or people that are interested in either providing the service or to the consumers that may live in the city. Another speaker said that, of course, the more businesses you add, of course, they start cannibalizing each other's business. So you don't want to overdo it either. And just like I proposed this one change to the ordinance that went in last year, somebody could come along next year, or maybe in several months when there's more evidence of how these businesses perform, and change it again. And yes, it's a long process, but I believe that it should be. And regarding the comment that we already have the right to limit it, words were thrown out like disingenuous and maybe that we're not being above board in what we're intending to do. But I think that communicating both to the community and to the business community that's interested in doing this, that our intention is to do only 2, is about as transparent as you can get. And having that be in the ordinance, I think, is important because it does send a message. A lot of the people that I've spoken to since we started down this path in January, even those that were very much opposed to having any businesses, feel that this compromise is reasonable and would put them more at ease in taking this step into this business and evaluating how it works out. So I think that if this gets us to a point where now the majority of our residents are comfortable with moving forward, and it moves this process forward, I think it's a win-win. And honestly, if both sides feel like they're losing something, maybe that's the best compromise we can get. But I think it helps us move it forward, and I think it does it in a way that's more sensitive to all members of the community and follows more in line with the recommendations that I'm seeing from the public health professionals. Our original numbers, by the way, were all presented to us by a consultant that we hired, HDL, who they do this for a living, so they laid this out. And they also make a lot of money on collecting taxes, and so they have a vested interest in seeing probably more businesses, and they're going to recommend doing more. And from the economic side, maybe that does make sense, but that's not the only dimension to this thing that we're considering. And so, looking at numbers that were based on the state's projections on what the sales would be statewide, with the numbers we saw from another economic consultant were anywhere between 1 and 5. 1 being on the low side, 5 on the high side of what San Bruno could potentially support. So I think offering 2 businesses the opportunity to come here and do business is right in line with those recommendations as well. And so I'm hoping a majority of my colleagues will support this new ordinance.
Any other council comments or Any comments or questions from colleagues? Mr. Hamilton?
Thank you. So I just want to just point out that when we were talking, the caller was talking about ratios, and when we've talked about ratios in the past, that was for storefronts, not for total businesses. And we're only proposing a single storefront for all 44,000 residents of San Bruno. So that's a 1 to 44,000 ratio, not a 1 to 19. The second business could potentially be a distribution, or under the ordinance, two distributions, businesses, and consumers cannot visit those establishments directly.
Mr. Salazar?
And to that point, I would say, we have empirical evidence from the city of South San Francisco that two delivery services, I believe that they have, are adequately representing their population, which is much larger than ours. And again, those ratios are approximations. We've heard from some people say that, they, while they're in favor or indifferent to having the businesses, that they wouldn't patronize them anyway. And honestly, we're going to be surrounded by competition in other cities. And so, and like I said before, we can always change it in the future if we find out that this is just an overwhelming success and people are lining up and the needs are going unmet. We can go back and revisit it at that time. But I think especially since the pandemic, we've seen a growing trend toward people opting to do takeout. They'd rather get online and get their goods, whatever it is, whether it's a pizza or cannabis, online and have it delivered. And so that model may prove to be more successful.
Through the mayor? Yeah. So you're absolutely correct that that we're going to be seeing businesses springing up in our neighbors, including South San Francisco, because they're looking at bringing in storefronts. Burlingame is looking at bringing in storefronts. And this, and I've mentioned this before, this is an opportunity, a rare opportunity given San Bruno's history, to lead instead of follow. So having an established business in any arena, in any area, and being there first and getting a chance to grow your customer base is always an advantage. So for us to start small, have 0 or 1 storefront to start with, and then watch storefronts spring up all around our neighbors, and then decide, oh, this is good, let's expand later. First of all, we would have to undo everything we've done tonight again and go through another 3-month process of hearings in order to make that happen. And then those businesses would, if we were able to approve another one, would be playing catch up to our neighbors. And I just don't think this is a good idea. We've heard from many members of the community who agree. We've heard from members of the community who don't want us to expand, but we have to acknowledge that we're getting feedback from both sides. And it was unanimous from our planning commission, and our planning commission is not necessarily a hotbed of cannabis use. The members of our planning commission, just as I am not. I don't use cannabis and don't plan on it. So I think that this is a decision that we need to make with the economic future of San Bruno in mind. And again, I strongly advise us to choose not to introduce this ordinance.
Councilmember Alvarez.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When I attended the newly elected conference in Sacramento back in January, I had the privilege to ask few of elected officials regarding cannabis. Unfortunately, most of the feedback that I received were all negative. I also promised myself to, when I was campaigning, to be open and weigh in the pros and cons and work with my colleagues, and I said that. And I think this is a good compromise. I think I will second what Councilmember Salazar said. If it were for him in the beginning, this ordinance will never take place. And I think, in my opinion, if I been here before when the ordinance was proposed, I probably would have never agreed as well. But I think we're open. I think this will be a good opportunity for the city as well to try and not be so aggressive, and listen to the other cities or jurisdiction that have been in this position, who had been open to this business. And like I said, pretty much most of the feedback that I received were all negative. And I'm not saying it would happen in our city, but to start moderately, I think it would be a positive return both ways if we entertain this ordinance or approve this ordinance. Thank you.
Thank you. For myself, I am going to support this ordinance. I do agree with some of the statements that have been made, a lot of the statements that we've heard pros and we've heard cons on people on both sides. But I also do think that, when we get questions or comments during this process about why do you allow any gun stores? Why do you allow a casino? And we're talking about one, and those are regulated in other ways that beyond our control. I think sometimes our community is willing to go into things, even height limits. Took a lot for this community to come to a compromise over the decades. And I think this is a compromise, and I think it doesn't make everyone, shall we say, feel that what they believe is right is succeeded, but it does bring compromise. It brings the process to continue. And I think that at times when it is uncertain for folks and they want to know that it's going to work and it's proven, I think this is a way in which to do that. I had not heard, and I usually am speaking to folks in the county, that the cities of South City, Millbrae, or Burlingame were looking for storefronts. That's just what I'm hearing or being told. It's not by consensus or polling. It is just by my engagement in the region. And so for that, I can continue to articulate, but I think a lot has been said. And so unless there's any other, if there's any additional comments or from colleagues.
Can I make one more comment?
Vice Mayor.
So there's really two parts of this this change that are meaningful, and one is the number of businesses, and the other one is the removal of downtown from the zones, and there will be also the removal of Tanforan. But as I said in the last meeting, that's not something that we need to disagree about. I just want to throw it out there, just to see if there is any possibility whatsoever of garnering support of leaving the small sliver of downtown that is not excluded from sensitive use in the allowable zones. I've said this before. The one block or block and a half of downtown at the north end that were the only areas where it would be allowed include a casino that where people cannot enter, children cannot enter, anybody under 21 cannot enter, has security, and is near the Caltrain station, and would be a great opportunity for folks who are traveling up and down the peninsula to be able to stop in San Bruno, patronize the dispensary, maybe stay for dinner, maybe stay for lunch, and see what our downtown has to offer. The vast majority of downtown is already excluded, and I'm just throwing a Hail Mary out here to see if we can get the north end of the downtown corridor to not be excluded.
Thank you for your comments. Councilmember Medina.
Since you're throwing Hail Marys, I could do a double reverse on that as well, and use that analogy a little bit. The number one thing, if you ask, top two, if you ask our downtown merchants is, we need more foot traffic. Consistently, they need more foot traffic. A dispensary downtown will provide foot traffic. Again, the zones that are prohibited, that we're agreeing to, children do not get into dispensaries. Children do not get into casinos. So that would be like the big compromise, I think, that I could support if we're talking compromise here. I don't think we need to, because we could, if three of us here decide that a dispensary or business doesn't meet our standards, we could say no to every single one. But I think if we were to poll our downtown merchants, the majority of them, overwhelming majority of them would say the dispensary would be fine because we need the foot traffic to support our businesses in order to thrive.
Seeing and hearing none, we'd already closed public hearing. I bring it back to the council if there's any action on the item.
Through the mayor, I'd like to make a motion for my Hail Mary, which would be to introduce the ordinance with the change that the downtown corridor remain as a allowable use. And yeah, is that clear enough? Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second, sorry.
There's a motion second on the question. If this were to be approved, which would modify what's before us tonight, does that have to go back to the Planning Commission?
Can you repeat your question, please?
So if there's a modification made to what is existing here tonight that we're discussing, does that need to go back because now there's been a modification to it?
If it's been already considered and discussed by the Planning Commission, then it would not need to go back again, read into the record when we make the motion.
Correct, but doesn't need to go back. Okay, it was just a procedural question. Okay, so there's a motion, Hamilton, seconded by Councilmember Marty Medina. Does everybody understand the motion?
Yes.
All those in favor say aye, and Hamilton, and against were Rico Medina, Salazar, and Alvarez, just for the record, since we didn't do a roll call. Any other action from council? Councilmember Salazar.
Through the chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the ordinance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion in Salazar, second in Alvarez. All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye. All Hamilton, the ayes, Rico Medina, Salazar, and Alvarez. Does that make it good and clear for staff's needs?
Yes, thank you.
Okay. All right. With that, why don't we go ahead? We don't need a break, or are we good? Okay. All right. All right, we're going to continue on, and now we're on to item 8, conduct of business, please.
Item 8A, consider adopting a resolution allocating an additional $1,500,000 from San Bruno Community Foundation Fund to the Recreation and Aquatic Center Project contingency funds, authorizing the city manager to execute an amendment to the San Bruno Community Foundation Grant Fund Agreement to increase the not-to-exceed grant fund from $50 million to $51,500,000, authorizing the transfer of $250,000 from the Beckner Shelter Road and Parking Lot Repaving Project, project number 51022, to the RAC project, and approving the project budget increase of $1,750,000 to adjust the total project budget from $60,540,228 to $62,290,228.
Thank you very much. City Manager Grogan.
Thank you, Mayor Medina, members of the City Council, and the public. Staff is before you tonight with a number of items related to the RAC. Certainly, the city clerk just read the item before you, but I just want to note that you'll also receive an update on construction through this presentation. The presentation will be provided by Matthew Lee, our Public Works Director, supported by our project manager, consultant, Rod McAray. I will now turn the presentation over to Matthew Lee, our Public Works Director.
All right, sorry. Yeah. Good evening, mayors, members of council. My name is Matt Lee, Public Works Director. I never step away from a football conversation. So if you're going to do a Hail Mary or a double reverse, the perfect defense to run is probably a prevent three defense with 5 zone underneath. So just so I can get myself into that conversation. But in reality, we're actually here tonight to talk about a more serious matter, the San Bruno Recreation and Aquatic Center. This is a great project. The presentation will be done primarily by Rod McAray, as Javon stated. Rod comes to us from Consor, and he has over 30 years of experience in construction management and project management. About 15 of those years, I believe, is with Caltrans as a resident engineer working on large transportation projects, and then the 17 years with the city of Mountain View, working on all sorts of public works projects. I'll bring Rod up so he can kind of start the presentation.
Thank you, Matt, for the introduction. And good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. So again, my name is Rod McAray. I'm the project manager. I'm here to provide you the construction update of the San Bruno Recreation and Aquatic Center. We have our typical agenda with some routine information. We have some a little bit detailed on change order report and budget update, and some information about additional funds requests. And we move on to what's going to be happening in the next 30 days and beyond, and some other related projects. And we get into the question. Information updates, we all know we started in September 2021. We are trending to complete fall of 2023. It's late fall 2023 due to some of the rains that we experienced. Up to now, it's still raining. But we completed about 55% of the project to the end of February, so we're pretty close to 60% to date. Photos below tells you some of there's not much of a change. This comparison from February to the March photos, aerial photos. The next slide shows you another EarthCom view from side view of the project, showing the difference between February 14, the last time we reported to you, and the yesterday's photo to be part of this presentation. Here's the aerial shot of what's going on, looking from above. Of course, there's some going on in the building. You could see obviously from the top the temporary scaffolding already been installed, so we could work on the exterior wall. A lot of the work on City Parkway has been done, so you can see there's a few things to be done there once the weather clears up. The parking lot is also being worked on. Some of the concrete curb and gutter has been installed, and half of the parking lot has been graded. And we're getting ready to work on some of the other items there. Here's the view of the building. You can see the natatorium and the gymnasium. List of things being done, being completed over at the natatorium area. So we're really getting ready to dig that pool. We've done a lot of things we could do around the pool. As well as the gymnasium, we continue to work inside the HVAC, a lot of mechanical being done, first and second floor, as well as some interior framing. Here's kind of look of the inside of natatorium. As I mentioned, some of the work being done. We have backfilled some of the trenches around the pool. We this is last month in February. We work on the mechanical worm area. We work on some of the slab between the gymnasium and the natatorium. We have a small piece of wall on the side of the pool that's been completed. We've been trying to protect the area for the pool excavation so we could dig it out once the weather clears up. We're working on the stairs as well in the natatorium area. Here's a look on the gymnasium. As I mentioned, a lot of work internal that we could do while the rain is still ongoing. We've been working on the interior framing. Some of the HVAC duct being installed, some of the overhead plumbing and mechanical being installed as well. So you can see the temporary scaffolding is now installed and trying to get as much done on the exterior wall. That's the look on the parking lot in February. This is what we reported to you last month. Yeah, half of the parking lot has been graded and compacted, so just really getting ready to get a clear weather and get all this parking lot done. The month of March is an update. You can see the previous photos. We were working on this. Now it's all poured inside the natatorium. All the stairs been poured. The wall that we had on the sides been completed. All the slab that was in between the gymnasium and the natatorium is now poured. So we're down to what we plan to do while it's still raining. This is the gymnasium area interior look, as well as the exterior wall being completed. A lot of big duct work is being done, so we're progressing internally as much as we can while it's still raining. Here's the parking lot view. As you can see, some of the curb been installed, half of the parking lot been graded and compacted. But we're still trying to manage around the rain. As you can see, it's still kind of wet, so we're trying to contain the rainwater, so when it stops, we could be ready to get in and start working again. Schedule update. As you can see, obviously, we got some rain started in the end of fourth quarter last year and continued to rain almost the entire first quarter right now, and that pushes our completion, obviously. We do as much as we can, but really can't control the rain. But we continue to progress. We try to work on line item 1A. We try to manage around and see what we could do. We could progress, so when the weather gets done raining, we can get back in there and do some work. We're doing a lot of work on the pool area, and hopefully we could, when the weather gets better, we get back and start digging. And the good thing is we got most of the city parkway done, the creek work, all those heavy dependent weather activities are completed. We lucked out that before it rains, we really got all that done. Of course, the building we're still ongoing internally. Hopefully, some of those weather-dependent activities in the building can start as soon as we finish some of this internal work. So it's just good timing. Hopefully, again, a lot of hope on the rain. We can't control it, but we're doing everything we can. Whatever we can do, we're not stopping to maintain progress. Like the parking lot, whatever we can do when it's not raining, we go out there and do some work. So public outreach, we continue to maintain our website to provide information about the project. We've been using the changeable message board to inform people of any road closure. Detour signs been out there. We looked at communication. We continue to communicate with Google Navigation if needed. We maintain our field contact numbers as necessary, or all the time, and the sign for the project sign is all available for the people to see. We have daily on-site representative. They are always in our trailer office. We maintain calls and emails. All of that's being answered and addressed as they come. Currently, we have some road closures happening on City Parkway. If you noticed, we started removing some of the trees. At the same time, we're going to try and take advantage of the tree removal, do some of the street work on City Parkway as part of the rock project. So we kind of try and piggybacking on the road closures to minimize inconvenience to the public. Project budget update. We're still operating on the City Council approved budget of $60,540,228. That's the total of the three columns. The soft cost column, which is $14 million, construction cost column, which is $43 million, and the project contingency column, which is the $3.45 and $990,000. So that's a project contingency. We are about spent $35 million. That's the total of all the oranges color and the blue. The soft costs include all the items listed under the soft cost. That include design costs, management fees, including some of the project costs like the Lara parking lot, the traffic signal that will be part of it, are part of the soft costs, as well as the tree removal that is happening in the Crystal Spring. We took $200,000 from the project contingency to fund that tree removal. That's why our balance of the project contingency is $3,445,990. But we are 52% spent. Construction cost is 55% spent. That's equivalent to the completed work. And the soft cost, we're about 70% complete if you add the total of the blue and the orange. Just to illustrate the funding sources as well as the project budget relationship. As you can see, we have two major sources of funds. We have the San Bruno Community Foundation funds, and we have the non-San Bruno Community Foundation funds. The San Bruno Community Foundation funds compose of 8 grant money that's coming from the San Bruno Community Foundation funds, with a total of $50 million that is funding 94% of the construction costs, which is in the gray, and some of the soft costs, which is the blue. Anything that's not funded by the San Bruno Community Foundation Fund is being funded by the other funds, which is basically city funds. That's coming from the Measure A, gas tax, and some of the money from YouTube, PG&E settlement, city funds, and other residual money from Crestmore project. And of course, the remaining balance is funding the project contingency, which is $3,445,990. Just to have numbers on that chart, as you can see, the funding sources, how it started with the approved budget of $59,990,000. In February 2022, when we amended the contract, we added $560,000. That's a combination of the water and sewer funds. That brings our budget or a funding source total to $60,550,000. Compared to the budget and expenditures, there was an initial adopted project components. That's about $54 million. That includes all the pre-construction design, building construction, all the listed projects, and all the other connected project to the rock project. So that gives us $54 million to spend from the initial adopted projects components. And we added the other components, other connected components, which is the water and sewer. That's $1,520,000, and then now we have some of the change order for the construction of the rock, which is about $2 million, and the anticipated change order of $1,018,000, and the additional removal of the tree of $201,000. All these things, if you total them up, will sum up to a new budget if we add the additional funds from the San Bruno Community Foundation funds of $62,290,000 and $228. As you can see, the project contingency is basically being funded by the city funds based on this information. And the $50 million budget coming from the San Bruno Community Foundation funds is just partially funding the initially adopted project components. Change order report. There's no change from the last time we provide you an update. We are to date approved $2 million
$95,000, $714. That's mainly coming from the resolutions of the discrepancies in the design. That's about 45%, and some unforeseen and unknown condition, which is a lot of them coming from contaminated soil disposal. The resolution and discrepancy of design are mainly some of the design changes that has to be implemented to follow the intent of the design and the code requirements that needed some changes that added some cost to the project. Of course, the public safety and convenience example is the DeSoto sidewalk, additional tree removal in the beginning of the project, and value engineering as some of the costs that we discovered that we could do better and faster that give us sometimes a credit rather than an add. And some owner requests that are special requests from the city. That's I might show you some of that in the next few slides. Here's the list of the approved change order to date. I'm not going to go through every line item of it, but I'm going to highlight a few things to share to you how those took place in a little bit more detail. You can see our total approved change order in here is $2,095,714 in a more detailed. Just to highlight about 6 of them, in the beginning of the project, we discovered some of those over-mature tree has to be removed and has to be taken down to protect the public as well as the building. We took down some of those, and it cost us about $80,000. Also, at the beginning of the project, we performed some structural loading design analysis, and they discovered that we have to meet code and has to upgrade some of the seismic braces that requires additional structural elements to meet the requirements. That's added cost to about $207,000. Right after that, we continued to perform some review of the structural requirements, and we discovered we need to put additional fabrication and steel erection costs to meet some of the design requirements and schedule, and that added a compensation of $336,000. If you recall from the beginning of the project, we have the 10 inches water line that was in conflict with the work that needs to take place from the beginning. That water line has to be, we have to install a temporary line in order to maintain services as well as to maintain fire requirement head pressure to the neighborhood. That cost us about $210,000. A couple more items that was added. We have the creek extension. While dealing with the temporary creek diversions, we discovered some of the environmental requirements as well as the creek capacity analysis. It requires us to extend the improvement all the way to the bridge. We call it kind of the bridge towards the city parkway to make sure we have consistent capacity as well as meet all the environmental requirements to do the temporary diversion. That cost us $280,000 to add. In the early going, when we start digging for the wall along the Crystal Spring and digging for the foundation for soil nail wall as well as deep foundation, we discovered some of those dirt was contaminated with high level of pesticide and petroleum, so that has to be disposed. So for the first half of the project, we spent about $447,000 of disposal of those contaminated soil. So now we're looking ahead. We looked at some of the potential change order that we think we're gonna need all the way to July of 2023. Kind of foresee some of these changes. So these changes are now under review, under negotiations. We're looking at it closely. The cost of this is approximately $618,000, just for some of those changes that we'll see out of the plans. And the large one is the additional contaminated soil that we have to dispose when we start digging the pool, indoor and outdoor. There's about a large number of 3,300 yards of dirt will have to be disposed as well. So I'm gonna show you a little bit more information on that. I highlighted some of the items that I would like to share. Like for example, the trash enclosure that goes in the parking lot. We have to modify
the walls and the roofings, make sure we accommodate the generator as well as meet the aesthetic requirements. Down in the first floor, we have some restroom that we have changed some of the walls from CMU wall to stud wall to accommodate some of the piping, fixtures that goes on that wall. That cost us about $90,000. On the second floor, there we have some access control issue. This is one of the owner's requests that we realize the second floor, as soon as you get into the elevator, you go up, there is really no control to go to the second floor. And so we decided to put that wall and doors that has some card reader in it. So that way we can control who goes in, only all the paid members, or at least we don't have staff on the second floor. The staff is on the first floor. If somebody goes up to the second floor, there's nobody there except that door that you're supposed to have a card reader to go in. So we put that storefront wall and door to have that control. Road reconstruction. This is the portion where we have a lot of utility complex. We were digging deep. We're dig down about 20 feet deep in there, and road completely got torn apart and had to be reconstructed to meet all the requirements. We can't just put it back the way it was, so we have to reconstruct that properly. That cost us about $60,000 in that area. Two more items. We have some mechanical roof curves and housekeeping pads that had to be installed to properly support some of those mechanical equipment, and that cost us about $100,000. And as I mentioned there, once we dig the pool, the last item on this list is we have about 3,300 cubic yard that we have to dispose when we start digging the pool. Some of those surplus dirt has to be disposed again, and we estimating we needed $400,000 to dispose that. We're still thinking of how we can dispose that cheaper. We're finding home for it to see if we could find somebody to take it. If not, that goes to the special facility to accept it. Having said all of that, the change order, the budget, potential change order, we are working with the $60,540,000, 228 as our current budget, with approved contingency at this point, at this time of $3,445,990, less the approved change order to date. We have a balance of $1,624,000, and if you deduct the potential change order, the anticipated contaminated soil, our anticipated contingency balance will be dropped down to $605,400, which is about 4% of the estimated remaining work by July 2023. Adding $1.5 million from the San Bruno Community Foundation funds will bring our contingency 10% of the remaining work by July. And that will be about 14% total by that time if the 1.5 million is added. With the proposed additional costs or additional funds, the proposed project budget will be $60,540,000 2028, plus the 1.5 million, plus the 250,000 transferred from the Beckner Shelter Road. We will have a proposed new budget of $62,290,228. Now let's just talk about what's moving ahead, what's going to happen the next 30 days and beyond. As I mentioned, we are really focusing, trying to get the pool dug and start working on the pool shell. We'll continue working on a lot of the mechanical and plumbing on all areas we could work on in the gymnasium area. Hopefully we move on to the side of the natatorium as we completed some of those slab. And we'll continue on the exterior wall frames and walls. We might see some of those drywalling happening in the next month or so. As well as some of the off-site work, when weather gets better, we're working on right now at Crystal Spring. We're trying to get some of the utilities complete, get the trench restored, while working side by side with the tree removal. We'll work on the parking lot, the truss enclosure generator. Some of the items that are critical is the PG&E, trying to get their power and gas in place. We're working with them closely as well. As weather gets better, we're going to go back to the creek, do some restoration, do some landscaping work, and hopefully by that time we could put in the pedestrian bridge. We have 2 pedestrian bridges to install on the orange color, and this is what the bridge looks like. The bridge is about 6 foot wide, 30 feet long. It has wooden deck. We can have 2-direction traffic there for one person, one direction that can fit. It's going to be built above the 25-year storm. The storm, just like what we had, a little bit stronger than what we had last December. So this bridge is going to be placed above those type of storm. The next slide is some of the project-related updates. Solar PV update, this effort is basically done. We have the power purchase agreement executed. We are now coordinating with construction. And we're going to be talking about construction hopefully in the next update. Here is the traffic signal at Crystal Spring and City Parkway. This project is part of the SOP cost, funded under Measure A and G for $750,000. The design of this is 90% complete. We're working on, we got all the documents ready to get it bid out. We're trying to get it bid next month, so award it sometime in June, July, and hopefully start construction in July as well, and time the completion within the completion period of the rack. So that's the goal. Here's the Beckner Shelter Road project budget. We're adding the $50,000 sidewalk improvement between the Lara parking lot and the intersection towards the rock. We're also adding the ADA bridge that connects between the pool parking lot and the rock. And we also putting money for the Beckner Shelter Road rehabilitation for $350,000. And there's an allowance of $150,000 for design and project management. That gives us a total cost for the Beckner Shelter Road of $950,000. Here's kind of like the photo of the whole thing of that project, just to give you the scope. So number one is number one photo is we're gonna replace the existing access to the picnic area number 14 to make that ADA standard. 2 and 3, we're gonna remove and replace some of the deteriorated pavement on Beckner Shelter Road all the way to the cul-de-sac. In the cul-de-sac, we're gonna repaint, refresh the existing parking lot, as shown in this photo. And number 4 photos, you will be replacing that tiny bridge. As you start upgrading the pavement, you'll be obligated to make that pathway to be ADA. So that's the bridge and the pathway that we also gonna need to upgrade. And the last photo, number 5, is the sidewalk between the Lara parking lot and the intersection. Just to give you an overview and outlook of the project. As you can see, the scope, we're about 55% complete. Some of those work has been completed under the light blue color. We're having some rain right now in spring, so hopefully it doesn't rain the whole entire spring. So hopefully we can get some of that work. A lot of those work, even some of the activities under the summer activities, we can get some of that done because that's critical. As you can see on the schedule, critical activities are happening between summer and fall. So that's getting squeezed if it continues to rain. But we're banking on stopping the rain hopefully in the next week or so we can get some of that work done in spring. Mainly the excavation of the pool is really holding us up. Other than that, if everything goes well, the schedule looks like we could be in commissioning sometime in fall. We could be planning for a dedication sometime in December. I mean, that's always what we're trying to do. That's the goal. That's what we're trying. if everything goes well. As you can see, the current contingency, just going back to the chart, as it runs parallel with our schedule, we are 52% spent on our contingency. We projected that we're going to be 83% on our contingency by July of 2023. That's the reason we're trying to put a little bit more money into the contingency to make sure we have enough funds to complete the project and close out the project. Instead of having a 17% contingency moving towards the end, just to take, having 17% of the contingency to do 15 million worth of work remaining might be a little bit on the low. So having a revised contingency will have 53% of contingency moving forward from July to completion. Next step is, the reason we are here is to adopt adopt the following resolution. You want to talk about that?
Yeah, so the next step is, I won't read it again because it was read by the clerk earlier, but essentially the next steps that we have here that council will take will essentially pave the way for staff to go to the April San Bruno Community Foundation meeting and ask for those funds. So that would be our next steps. We're open to any questions that you may have on the project itself.
Thank you very much for the information, the update. Questions from colleagues on the presentation? Councilmember Medina.
Yes, thank you. I always find this type of work fascinating. My questions from slide 17, you summarize the Beckner Road as it's one line item and it's 950,000, but when we go further down into the presentation and dig down to it, it's broken down more. So it's nice to know that one road doesn't cost $950,000. And I'm sorry?
There's only one.
I thought one of the figures.
One that we're adding is just one.
And so the one bridge is 400,000?
Just the bridge.
So
in design, and we have an option to get it bid out or become a change order.
People can drive pretty fast. Is there any intent to put a
Repaving project, the original, it's beyond mill and fill.
Okay, I've seen that striping forever, so.
There and the parking lot. That was part of the increase in cost in that Beckner shell in the parking lot is part of ADA requirements now.
Very much.
Vice Mayor.
So just one other question regarding the Beckner and the whole city. So I'm glad it's getting done. Well, I'm looking at the illustration on slide 35, and it's showing the new striping and the ADA space. But then on the opposite side, where there used to be people would park parallel, it says no parking. Is that just? It's hard to tell from this tiny little image, but is it because of the width? Because it seems like, historically people have, parked nose in, in the same way that it's being striped here. But then you were able to park parallel on the other side, and there was still plenty of room for cars to pass.
Yeah. So when we actually looked at
is that lot not wide enough to accommodate nose-in parking where you have it, 2 cars to pass, and then a parking lane on the west side?
So I think the question you're asking is there enough space?
Yes.
Our original intent as part of this project was to replace in kind. We issued a notice of exemption based on that. Increasing the parking lot spaces would require us to look at it further. Mm-hmm. But that is something that we can look at during the design process. We're currently in conversations with the planning group in CED, in the Community Economic Development Department, to discuss through the parking spaces.
Okay, I would just be curious, because again, it wouldn't necessarily be, anything striped or anything. But it stuck out to me in the drawing, because it says no parking along that stretch. So some thought must have gone into it up till now. I have one other question after looking at the schedule on slide 13, and that has to do with the Creek and Park. So obviously, there's been a lot of work done away from the rack on the south side of City Park Way. Looking at this, it appears that that work will all be completed as we're entering Q3. Is that correct? The reason that I'm asking is I'm wondering at what point the fences on the south side of City Park Way can come down and people can start enjoying that part of the park.
So the plan was to get in there spring, get some of those creek bank restoration done, complete our irrigation, and take the fence out. Now, we want to keep probably the fence a little bit longer to establish the plan so nobody step all over the place and make it established and pick up the fence sometime this summer. So that's kind of like what we're thinking, if the weather holds the way we planned it.
Okay, so we're hopeful that sometime during the summer the fences will come down, but we understand because of the rain delays and all that, and we of course want to keep them up there while the grass gets established. Is that going to be the replacement grass? Is that seed or sod?
It's going to be some seeds, some plants, combination of that. Yes.
Got it. Great. Thank you.
Other questions on the presentation? Seeing none at this time, then I was going to ask if there are any members of the public. Other discussion? Councilmember Medina.
Yes, thank you. Repeatedly, I'm seeing posted, and there was a public comment submitted today about the width of City Park Way, and I believe the answer has been given at least once, and my comment is to help people remember that, if it could be repeated. It's a park setting, and people should be driving slow crossings, and I was wondering, I understand the first lift is in, so one, can we just get a little explanation on why the width has been designed the way it is, and two, any thought in engineering some speed deterrence for that roadway?
As previously expressed by the city manager, during the design process, the intent was to narrow the road to reduce the speed through that park area because of the fact of the pool and the gymnasium and the park right directly across the street. And, you know, if we recall, prior to the existing recreation center or swimming pool coming down, there were a lot of kids running back and forth. There's a lot of picnic tables, and it's a very actually busy area. And so my understanding was that during that design process, the thought process was to narrow the road to slow down the speed. I think the narrowness of the road in itself is what's making certain drivers feel uncomfortable because they've traditionally gone through there at a larger width. The designs for that road, we've asked the designer to look at it again, and it is a road that has appropriate road width. It is narrower than what it was before, but that was designed that way to help with that. In terms of, I think your question was, you know, putting speed bumps or anything in that area, the road width is already narrow to the point where it's having people drive slowly. I don't think in the design that it ever called out speed bumps for that, to make sure when we have the facilities open, it's nice new pavement.
City Manager.
Sure. I'll just add to that we have received questions of, can a fire truck go down the street? We have tested it. It was engineered, and the fire department has driven 2 trucks in opposite directions, and when you're driving at appropriate speeds, you can certainly pass. I do know that there are also construction fences up that actually makes the roadway feel a little bit narrower now. And as Councilmember Medina mentioned, only the first lift is in, and so the roadway currently is actually a little lower than the concrete lip. And once that second asphalt layer is in, actually the road width will expand a little bit. And so, as was mentioned before, absolutely. One of the things that the designers looked at is that two of the ways that you reduce speeds is you narrow and curve. And both of those tactics were used within the park. And it is a very highly utilized roadway in the middle of City Park. And I do know that there has been a number of residents and community members that have articulated that it's a narrower than they expected, and they have to slow down in order to make sure that they stay within the lanes. I think that if there continue to be speeding problems there, looking at additional measures like speed bumps is one measure, as well as additional signage, just to really let people know it's called City Parkway because it's in a park, and there are a lot of users there, and we want to make sure everybody is as safe as possible.
Just so speed bumps could be added, and what about like an elevated crosswalk? Like that main crosswalk is where the majority of people legally cross the road. So in designing that where it was elevated, it would provide additional sight distance or line of sight because people are a little higher, and it will cause people to slow down because it actually is a little bit of a hump there. So just that possibly could be an option depending on what we see.
Right. I do know that our traffic engineers have taken a look at the plans and feel comfortable as designed. I think once the final construction is complete, if there continue to be issues with speeding, the city can look at additional measures, as you mentioned, a raised table across the crosswalk or speed bumps.
Just one more, Mr. Mayor, sorry. Sorry for then the other thing was for people that are actually riding bikes. So that road is designed that the people on bikes do have the right to be on the street just like any other spot. As for riding a bike through the park, that's how I would do it. If you wanted just to take your time because you're on a bike, you're just chilling, enjoying the park. So that is also another option, right? It's wide enough. Thank you.
Councilman.
On the completion date, maybe next spread 2%. And we're anticipating to complete on December. So it would be nice to know your timeline of your scheduled work up to the finish line, if that's possible. Thank you.
Okay. Councilmember Salazar.
Thank you. So during the last RAC committee meeting, one of the members brought up a question about the contingency and why raise it at this point as we're more mature in the project. And I've been thinking more about that, and I agree that typically as you move through the project and you know a lot more about the situation, which apparently we've become very informed on the conditions. It seems that the risk has largely been mitigated to this point, and so contingency is probably doesn't need to be as high as it could have been at the beginning. One argument I heard was that initially we came in with probably too low of a contingency for the building project. The other concern is, I looking at the breakdown, and this is the first time I think in a while that we've actually seen a lot of the details in terms of what makes the price tag what it is. It's grown by 20% just over the initial building cost because we've added other components that we wanted to be part of this project, not all of which I think would carry the same risk as a large building project would. And so, I'm looking right now at slide number 28 of the presentation, I believe, and it shows where, where we currently stand. And so if I'm reading this correctly, our current contingency balance is 1.6 million, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. And so we have other anticipated costs that I assume these are not construction costs in a total of about $1 million, which would leave us at the end of this with $600,000.
Correct.
So reading this, it tells me that with now not having to look into a crystal ball and understanding our project constraints, we've estimated $1 million in unforeseen expenses we have a contingency of 1.6 to cover those, and at the end of the day, we're still expecting to have 600,000 left over. And I know that's a small amount, and I'm a big fan of this project and definitely don't want to see it derailed or delayed. But it seems to me that at this point, needing an additional 1.5 million seems like really a large amount for the amount of risk that's still involved in the construction of the building itself. So that's my concern right now. And I get that what we would request is a not to exceed, and that any remaining money would go back to them. I'm wondering why we would want to tie up that much of their money, knowing that we probably, at this point, will have 600,000 left over.
So I think what we're discussing is a matter of risk, right? Trying to make sure we get the project completed, per the design, as quickly and as cost effectively as possible. The risk, like we discussed early on in the project, usually comes from when you're doing excavation. There's a lot of unknowns there. You can have utility conflicts, or you can have bad soil, which we didn't discover until we started doing the pool and the natatorium, which took away a big chunk of that effort. As we move forward in construction, the risk does get a little smaller. The risk is reduced because you're starting to identify things and get into the building of the process. But when you get into the building itself, it's not non-existent. There will still be conflicts that we're trying to work through and hash out. And I think Rod did throw a lot of numbers at you guys, but I think the level of concern is the remaining 605,000 in contingency, I believe was like 4% of the, was it the remaining construction amount?
$605,000 to handle $15 million worth of work.
Yeah, so there's $15 million worth of work left, and it's 600,000 for that $15 million worth of work. That percentage is one that we felt was a little low, and so we wanted to make sure we had enough to move forward. We also had conversations with the foundation, and they told us, if you come to us just once. And so that's why we made sure we had that's why the number may feel a little larger. And as you kind of alluded to at the San Bruno, at the RAC Advisory Construction Committee, Leslie Harayama, the executive director, did say that the grant that they're giving us is on a reimbursement basis. They're not actually transferring any funds over to us. We actually have to provide the invoices and the receipts and show that it's eligible within the grant to get that funding back. And so based on all those things, that's why we came up with the $1.5 million amount, just to make sure we have enough to kind of make our way through to construction. As Rod highlighted earlier, this is one of the wettest winters we've seen in a while. I hope that it stops soon, not because we don't need the water, but because we can continue and open the rack this year. And so that's another level risk that we're kind of working with at the moment.
Yeah. Thank you. All right, thank you. And I do have a lot of confidence in the team. I think you guys have done a really good job of containing the costs. And so thank you for that. And I will support this, but let's do our best to not actually have to cash that check. Thank you.
Understood.
Thank you. Even though this was explained at the March 15th RAC meeting, I'm one of those too, when people were saying, well, go back and go back and go back. Other member or two of the public had kind of challenged the council as to why wouldn't you ask for more. And I think it's been provided that the foundation is willing and is there. And yes, they've made the statement about coming the one time. But I also share with Councilmember Salazar as far as I'm hoping the check doesn't get cashed. And I know it goes back, so I get that. But it also is taking their assets from their investment pool that can be utilized to gain more monies to continue but yeah, I'll be supporting this, but I wanted to mention also coming from DeSoto today, this afternoon, through DeSoto, through the park, going over to Oak, in one of the lanes, feet on each side, so I missed it, but again, with that fresh work being done, and I know that, it's always sometimes when we do work within the community on the other streets, and it's like, it's not holding up well, it didn't settle well, and people being able to get through, as well as is there any other comments or questions from colleagues? This is an action item. Is there any action from the body? Councilmember Salazar.
Through the chair, I will make a motion to adopt the resolution.
Is there a second?
A second.
Motion Salazar, second Alvarez, to adopt the resolution as read by our city clerk. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Unanimous vote, 5-0. Thank you again. And with that, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and be moving on to item B. So council will be in recess for about 5 minutes, please. Thanks. All right, good evening. City Council is back from its recess, and now we are on, we're still under conduct of business, and now we will move on to item B1.
Item 8B1, consider adopting a resolution to restore funding for the Florida Avenue Park Construction CIP project through an appropriation of $2 million from the Development Impact Fees, Community Facilities Impact Fees subaccount.
Councilmember Medina.
Yes, thank you. My home is within 500 feet of Florida Park, which presents a prohibited conflict of interest for me under the Political Reform Act. Thus, I need to recuse myself from this matter. I'll be back.
And now we will turn it over to our city manager, Javon Grogan.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor Medina, council members, and members of the public. We are here tonight, as the city clerk mentioned, to discuss appropriating city development impact fees for the construction of Florida Avenue Park that has a very long history. And we were, as will be noted, thankfully able to open this area during COVID to the community by planting sod and irrigation. However, there is a fully designed plan for a comprehensive neighborhood park that includes a 2 to 5 and a 5 to 12 playground equipment as well as adult exercise equipment. And so I will turn the presentation over to Ann Matola, our Community Services Director, that will take us through this item. The objective is to see if we are bringing this project off of pause and moving forward with developing the park, or if we're going to go in a different direction. As council knows, this project has been essentially on pause because of lack of funding. And now with development impact fee revenue, we have the money to move forward, but we are very much aware that there may be other priorities for those funds or a desire to do an assessment later on. So Ann Matola, Director, please take it away.
Thank you, Javon. Good evening, Mayor Medina and council members. So this evening, as mentioned by the city clerk, we are considering a resolution to restore funding to the Florida Avenue Park CIP project. It does work. Great. So just to review the timeline for those that may not be familiar with the whole trajectory of this project. It's been in the works for a while now. The park is on a parcel at 324 Florida Avenue that was purchased by the city in 2014. And work began a couple of years after with remediation of the site and a pretty robust community engagement process for the park design. And by summer of 2017, there was a design complete and the project was actually bid for construction. But at that time, the project had a delay because of an appeal of the project design. And we won't get into the appeal and the issue with the trees, but there was a settlement with the Friends of the Florida Avenue Park, and a final design was revised, and that's the rendering that you see right now. And it has a lot of really wonderful features for this, which you see in a neighborhood park. A great lawn. This particular park featured some adult exercise equipment. I know there's a swing that's incorporated into the design. There's a picnic area, there's seating elements. There's an ornamental fencing at the entry that picks up on the City with a Heart theme. And of course, there are street trees, shade trees, and a new Coast live oak to replace one of the trees that was removed, the big Norfolk pine. So in 2020, there was a restart of the Florida project, and as City Manager Grogan mentioned, we put sod on the lawn. There was a little bit of a community event there. And also at that time, we confirmed that the construction documents were revised because we were going after one of the Prop 68 statewide park development and community revitalization program grants. Now this is the second time we brought this project to this grant process. We had an earlier attempt in 2018, but we weren't successful in that either. And so because of this, because we went through these attempts, these funds are now exhausted. There won't be a round 5 of this particular grant. Because of this, we included this in the CIP budget to be funded through park and lieu funds, but unfortunately, those funds are no longer available. Which brings us to today, where we are recommending that we seek funding for this from the Development Impact Fees Community Facilities subaccount. And one of the really important things about this particular park, if you look at the city, we have these really beautiful, we actually have really beautiful neighborhood parks. We have some rather large, we have our community parks, we have some sports facilities, but the neighborhood parks that are tucked into the different neighborhoods, we don't see that on the east side of El Camino. In this particular location, it's a really great opportunity to do something wonderful for an environment which is very urbanized, it's very hardscaped, properties are closer together with less type of recreational outdoor space like front yards, backyards. And so the ability to add this really kind of humanizes the environment. As we saw during COVID, it was actually really well used. I mean, it was really the simplest thing that could have been done was to put turf in this parcel, and it was quite well used. It's still well used. I walk around there from the office, and I'll always see, kids out there reading, people playing. And so the idea is that, when you really see it activated, you understand that people need these breaks in hardscape in order to really kind of have that quality of life enhancement that parks can bring. So at this point, staff is recommending, I don't know why these are changing so slowly. Staff is recommending that council consider the resolution before you. Within the fund right now, it's 6.8 million. Should you approve this evening, it'll reduce the fund to 4.8 million. Great. And so that is the recommendation before you, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the presentation. Questions from colleagues on the presentation? With that, let's see if there are any members of the public that wish to comment on this item.
No hands are raised.
Okay. Hearing none, members of the public that wish to speak, let's bring it back to council for any other further discussions, questions, dialogue, interaction. Councilmember Salazar.
Thank you. Just one comment. So I was on the Park and Rec Commission when the concept of that park came to them, and I was on a subcommittee that actually did the community outreach, and I saw how much excitement there was around the designs and the participation from the community in getting that type of amenity in their neighborhood. And I just want to say that I know $2 million sounds like a lot of money, but I think that's a debt that's been owed to that area for a long time, and I absolutely am thrilled that we finally have the money to move forward on that project.
I will say, also, as somebody who served on the subcommittee back from a long time ago, we met at the Entrepreneur Center and had community neighborhood outreaches and wanted to hear from folks. What I do appreciate, and I'm thankful, is that staff tried diligently for the grants. So it was, let us try to find ways to have that funding source. It is true, for those that may not remember now, because it's been so long since the house that existed, which in my young days was considered the haunted house when you walked by, because it had just boarded up in the way it looked. Obviously, just the grass itself is a needed improvement and a much welcomed site. And so to be able to have these funds allocated out to this project, because you've made the attempt you could on the grants, and so thank you, and to staff. So I think this is something that we started, something we should finish, and something that has come time, and something that they're owed in that neighborhood, in that area of the community, to be able to have that amenities as other areas in our community do. So I'm happy that this has come before us again, and I want to thank you. Vice Mayor Hamilton.
Thank you. I concur with all comments that have been made. This is a beautiful design. Obviously, would have been great to get grant funding for it. Honestly, such a beautiful park in an underserved area. I don't even want to go see what parks got those grants, because I can't think of anything more deserving than this project. Like you, I'm down there a lot, and ever since the space was activated with the sod, which was a great move, and it was done before my tenure, but I was very pleased to see that, and I'm always seeing families out there playing frisbee or utilizing the space. So this is going to be really, really well received in the neighborhood. It's long overdue, and I'm very happy to support it.
Any other questions or comments? Any action by colleagues? This is again a resolution.
Through the mayor,
Vice Mayor?
Be honored to introduce the resolution to restore funding for the Florida Avenue Park Construction CIP project through an appropriation of $2 million from the Development Impact Fees, Community Facilities Impact Fees subaccount.
I'll second.
I second.
Nope, I'll let Sam.
Sorry.
Motion and 2 seconds. All those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? We do have Marty Medina recused. Is unanimous at a 4-0-1. Thank you very much. And now we will ask Councilmember Marty Medina to briskly walk back in as he is. And we will move on to B2, please.
Item 8B2, consider adopting a resolution to appropriate $51,409 for the Pacific Heights Park Pathways Rehabilitation CIP project and approve an appropriation adjustment to the fiscal year 2022 to 23 Community Services Park Division budget in the amount of $91,520 for the City Park Tennis Courts resurfacing project and fund both projects from the General Fund Capital Reserve Fund.
Director Amendola, please.
Good evening, Council. So this next item is a request for fund from the Capital Fund, from the General Fund Capital Reserve for 2 different projects, and we'll review them. Here we go. We're going to start with Pacific Heights Park. So this project that we're looking at is a pathway improvement project, and this has been part of a multi-year pathway improvement program. We've renovated pathways in City Park, Commodore Park, Grundy Park, and this is the last of some pathways that were identified through an ADA audit to be improved. And so at the end of calendar year 2021, the city applied for a Prop 68 per capita grant for the pathway rehabilitation project at Pacific Heights Park. I want to give you some details so you can see the conditions of the park. And the grant, and in the grant when we submitted it, because we were doing some costs for this, we also included that if there were additional funds, that we would also resurface the basketball court and the surround at the play area, and you can see the condition of those in this photo. So the total project is a little over $257,000, and this includes the $205,635 from the per capita grant award, and then a required match of 20% of the total project, and that's how we get the $51,409. So this match was included in the 2022-23 CIP budget to be funded for Park and Lieu, which, as we know, is no longer available. And so staff is recommending that we fund it now through the General Fund Capital Reserve. And the match is a requirement of the per capita grant, which is why we're here asking for that replacement of using the General Fund Capital Reserve, rather Park and Lieu. Oops. And there's more. So we've recently noticed that the 4 tennis courts, which are at City Park, and the only tennis courts that the city owns, they're really showing significant signs of wear. It's been about 10 years since the last time we resurfaced the courts. And the lifespan actually is usually shorter than that. We've done some rough estimates with a couple of companies, and we know that the lifespan when we do it again will be about 8 years, and typically what you see here is everything that would be required for resurfacing. So it's leveling and crack repair, repainting the courts. We did estimates for striping for tennis on the 4 courts and also doing pickleball for 2 of them. I mean, if we're going to stripe them, we need to get ahead of the pickleball people. That'll come and ask us. And it also includes repainting all of the net posts. So as I mentioned, should we do this, we estimate that the resurfacing will last for about 8 years. And the estimated cost for this is $91,520. So staff is also recommending that we fund this with the General Fund Capital Reserve. So as you can see, the total cost of both projects is $142,929. And currently, the General Fund Capital Reserve fund balance is projected to be about $27.9 million at the end of this fiscal year. And so the combined appropriation would leave a balance of $27.75 million. And so that leaves us with the recommendation to consider the resolution to appropriate the funding for both the Pacific Heights Pathway Projects rehabilitation and the City Park Tennis Courts resurfacing project. And so with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for the presentation and report. Are there any questions from colleagues on the presentation? No. With that, let's see if there's any members of the public that wish to speak on this topic, please.
No hands are raised.
Okay, having no members of the public, then may we say if there are any questions or comments? I know I have any, but Mr. Hamilton, I saw that you.
Yeah, I'm supportive of both of these projects. I don't play tennis, but I've received lots of comments about the condition of the tennis courts. Tennis courts do need to be rehabilitated every so often, and we're past the lifespan of the refresh for the tennis courts, and I'm glad that we're having the foresight to add pickleball because of the popularity of that. For Pacific Heights, this is really a no-brainer. I walk up there with my dog, and Penny and I we can't use the pads. We actually walk on the grass because of the risk of turning an ankle because the pads are in such poor condition and absolutely need to be replaced. So I am in favor of both of these projects.
Councilmember Medina.
Mayor Medina?
Well, I was going to go next. So.
Oh.
Go ahead, sir.
That's all good. It's great to see that we're doing the things that I think our community really wants. And I know pickleball is one of them because I'm sure you heard probably more than anyone of that growing popularity. I have yet to play, but I'll be happy to play. Just wanted to clarify for the basketball courts at Pacific Heights, that is included, or I just wanted to be clear, I didn't really capture that when you were.
So we did, when we applied for the funding, we did an estimate on what we could include in it. And as we know, like the costs change. So currently it includes creating a new court. Because that one almost has to be kind of torn out and poured again.
Right, okay. Just,
Yep.
I had a parent ask me not too long ago about it. So that is the idea with the striping, and then the nets will get changed, and is it
Yes.
the backboards are in fair enough
We
shape?
were just looking at the surface.
Okay,
Because it's
okay.
kind of like work.
All right, fantastic. It's great to see work at our parks. Thank you.
For me, on the tennis courts, I thank you, because I had brought this up before, because yes, I went out and played tennis last year, and it was, well, my game wasn't good, but at the same time, the court wasn't either, the surface. And speaking to folks who are much more talented than I out there, it was bad. And I remember when I worked for Parks and Rec, there was only so long, and I think we stretched it beyond what we should. But how long do you think it might take for this process, and how are we going to notify those so they don't get to the fence and it's like, oh, I wish I had known?
We'll have to bid the project because of the cost, and once we have a timeframe, we'll notice the site with adequate time, at least. It takes a couple of weeks for them to activate the different companies, so we'll give plenty of notice.
Thank you. And then the pickleball, are we taking away a court, or is it just in combination with?
It's in combination with.
'Cause I
So we're
know
going to use the same nets.
That question will come up next.
Yeah, so the idea is we're doing this because you can use the same courts. The nets, sometimes they'll say are different, but we're not going to change out nets. We're going to keep the tennis net there. So the purists we may hear a little bit from that, and we'll address that. But in the new facility, the gymnasium will be marked for pickleball, so we'll be able to accommodate them with real pure courts inside there.
Thank you.
We'll be able to have a little bit of
That's good
something
to
for
know.
everyone.
Just like the pool, indoor and outdoor.
Yes.
Okay. With that said, there's no other comments from colleagues. This is a resolution.
Actually, you know what? I just one quick thing. And
You want to play tennis?
No, I don't want to play tennis. I'm glad the mayor brought up the notifying people, just let them know when it happens. So, I mean, it happens anyway, but I'm assuming we'll put out like social media and all that, and let council know so that we can amplify that, so that people know when the construction is happening, and I'm sure there'll be a lot of excitement for it. And just want to say thank you to you and the team for bringing this project to us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any action from council? It's a resolution.
Move to approve.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Salazar Hamilton, motion seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Pass unanimously, 5-0. Thank you very much. Now we'll move on to item 9, council committee report out. Do we have any report outs? Vice Mayor Hamilton.
I need to switch pages. Give me a moment. Sure. Thank you. I have 3 brief report outs. Had our monthly meeting of the Bay Area Water Supply and Conservation Agency on March 16th, during which we received a report detailing BAUSCA's 10-year capital improvement program. There's $2.1 billion in projects planned for our regional and Hetch Hetchy water systems over the next 10 years. We also received the water supply report. Not a big surprise. We've had a lot of rain, and the snowpack is well above 200% of the normal median for April. The water bank is full. The staff who manages our water systems are intentionally leaving room in our reservoirs because of the additional atmospheric events that were predicted at that meeting, and one of them came through today. The precipitation index at Hetch Hetchy, this is rain that falls, rain and snow that falls directly at the site of the reservoir, equals that of 1983, which is the wettest year on record. So this is shaping up to be a record-setting year. And then right now we're waiting a ruling from the SFPUC about their recommendations to the governor about continuing the drought declaration. It's widely anticipated that the drought may not be completely rescinded, but will be ratcheted way back from the severe declaration that we had previously. Moving on, we had the Airport Land Use Committee on March 23rd. We had 2 items. We ruled unanimously that Foster City's 2023 to 2031 housing element is compatible with the airport land use policies for San Carlos Airport. And we ruled 6-2 to expand the definition of what R&D use is to include life sciences activities for Belmont zoning ordinance. This is to allow some projects to remain compatible with land use policies for the San Carlos Airport. And then lastly, recently appointed with Councilmember Salazar to the Cybersecurity Committee. I've reached out to the city manager to ask to schedule an initial meeting between relevant staff, Councilmember Salazar and myself, to discuss this effort, its recent history, and its possible direction.
Thank you. Any other council committee reports out? Councilmember Medina?
Yes, I just wanted to report out on a little on Peninsula Clean Energy, where I'm the city's representative on the board of directors. Peninsula Clean Energy offers lower energy, cleaner energy and lower energy than anybody else. Wanted to let our residents know that there are openings on the Citizens Advisory Committee. Those applications are necessary to be submitted online by March 31st. And just sorry for the late notice. And that's all I have, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? And if not, let's move on to comments from council members. Any comments this evening? No? No? Councilmember Salazar.
Thank you. We, last weekend, we had our retreat to go over the year's initiatives. And one thing that that didn't come up, and I had intended to bring back, and it's something that I think was on our work plan, but maybe not listed as an initiative, and it's something that our old city attorney was working on in revising our municipal code. And I know we've allocated additional dollars this year for outside counsel, and I think one benefit we have now is that we have a deeper bench of legal assistance, and so given that there may be some capacity there, I would like to reactivate that effort, and so I wanted to see if there was general agreement from the council to ask staff to make sure that that doesn't fall off the radar.
For myself, I'll say yes.
I'll say yes.
If I can, Mayor?
Let's pause for the city manager.
Yeah.
Before
Thank you. So that is an active project. It's on our tickler file, and RWG, our legal firm, is certainly working on it. Actually, the bulk of the work right now sits with the operating departments. And so when the prior city attorney departed, there was review and comment needed from city departments. I do know that RWG and Trish have that. They're in the leadership role, but they are working with various city departments. And so it is very much an active project, and I think we can just provide council with an updated schedule on when that's coming back to you.
Thank you. Did you have something?
Yeah. I wanted to thank the council of the approval to move forward with Florida Park. I know there's been some comments out there that was something that needed to be done before we did other work, and specifically at Centennial Plaza. And here we are, hopefully going to do both. So it's important that we continue making the progress on the things that our residents enjoy and want. So thank you to everyone involved, and see you at the park.
For myself, I want to thank staff on March 16th. Myself and Dave Bruto through Assembly Member Pappin's office met with city manager, the assistant city manager, public works director, the fire chief, and I think it was 4 or 5 members of Caltrans. And we came together to dialogue in regards to the vacant lot property. Also with that came the timing of being able to also check on a permit request that the city had that seemed to have been delayed and roadblocked. And I believe we're making some progress on the permit, and yet still more information to come in regards to the future lot. But it was an effort thanks to the Assembly Member's office to facilitate that and get us together. And so I want to thank staff and the Dave Bruto from the Assembly Member Pappin's office. Now, March 28th, I went down to Foster City to offer my congratulations to Tony Perkins from the San Bruno Police Department for being recognized at the 58th Annual Peninsula Council Lions Club Police and Fire Awards. And Tony was given the award for police valor. And so I want to congratulate him, was able to meet his mother and his daughters and a few other friends there. And so congratulations to him, and thank you for his years of service to San Bruno and also his award representing San Bruno that night. With that, being nothing else, we will go ahead and adjourn this meeting to the next regular city council meeting, which will be held on April the 11th, 2023, 7 p.m. right here at the Senior Center. Everybody have a safe and enjoyable, hopefully dry, rest of the week. Meeting adjourned.